Bueno, pues muy buenos días a todos y a todas.
Good morning to you all.
Bienvenidos a esta Universidad Pontificia
And welcome to the University of Comillas. My name is Clara Martínez. I'm the Vice-Chancellor for the Students' Affairs, and I'm responsible for the Department of Sports, which has organized this meeting. I want to thank the organizers of the first European Congress for choosing us to host this event. It is a pleasure to host this Congress. We hope there will be more, and we are convinced of the importance of sports for the development of our community and society as a whole. We are glad to support an initiative to promote social inclusion and equal opportunities. These are key aspects for our university. This is visible in two facts: the existence of our Department of Sports, which tries to promote sports and physical activity, and secondly, because we are teaching degrees which are not only linked to this Congress, in particular our degree in physical activity and sports sciences. We are now sharing this environment with you all, and we hope that you will have a profitable day today. We think this is a unique opportunity to work together and to achieve the goals of this project. So I welcome you. I thank you for being here, and I expect that this Congress will meet all our expectations. And now I will give the floor to Fernando Soria, who will introduce our speakers.
Thank you very much, Clara. Welcome, everyone. The first Congress, Europe is moving. It's the first one, but there will be more with the help of the European Union. Firstly, I would like to thank the university. Thank you for having us. We also want to thank the Deputy Counsellor for Sport, Alberto Tomé, the Embassy for Slovenia, and Grgantov and Desislava Petrova for the Embassy of Republic of Bulgaria. Also Antonio Saccone, who's also here, and Konstantin Zankov. Thank you all for coming. And now we will hear from Antonio Saccone. Thank you very much.
Good morning to you all. Thank you for being here so early. I know it's not so easy to be here in the morning. And thank you to the university for hosting this event. I welcome to you all to the community of Madrid and to this Congress. Europe is moving, because it's not just Madrid or Spain which are moving. And now we will know more details about the Erasmus project, Europe is Moving, which promotes social inclusion through sports in the media. As Fernando has explained, this project is supported by the European Union, and there are several partners, including España se Mueve, Radio Capodistria, and the Bulgarian Sports Development Association. I want to thank you for your invitation, and I want to congratulate you for choosing Madrid, our community, as a place to present this ambitious project. This project is aligned with the objectives of our regional government. We understand sport is a vital engine for the development of society because of the benefits for our health and for all aspects of our life and quality of life. So we are glad of having this event here. And it's good for us to know that Madrid will be the promoter of this project in whole Europe. We will make our contribution to a more inclusive European society. We believe that sport is an agent of change in our time, not just because of having healthy lifestyles, also because of the values we promote. We intend to improve quality of life of people, and we will also approach this as a way for improving social inclusion. We manage sport for different people with different abilities, and we promote different initiatives to boost the practice of physical activity among disabled people. These initiatives take place in schools and high schools, and we collaborate with sports federations, which play a key role in our sports policies, so no one is left behind. We don't leave behind people with less economic resources or migrant people, because we are engaged with people, with all of them, and we try to give them the opportunities to achieve their goals and their social, personal, and emotional improvement. We are aware of the importance of effort, discipline, fair play, and respect, regardless of each one's abilities. And these values are not only linked to the practice of all sports. That's why all these initiatives and these efforts are welcome. We have seen the importance of all these values during the pandemic, and we have seen it in all fields of our society. Health care, for example, or the primary sector, which kept us supplied during all these months. Mutual support has been the rule among the citizens of Madrid, and these values are the values of sport. So all of us can have a level playing field regardless of our abilities, of our economic situation. So we have to pass along this message, to spread this news, and we have to rely on professionals of the media, because you are the best prepared to explain the opportunities linked to sport and to promote social inclusion and equal opportunities for all of us. Sport is good for people's dignity. We can't afford to leave anyone behind. I will thank you once again because of this invitation, and I want to share my congratulations for the project you have carried out. These partners have worked together in 3 countries, Spain, Slovenia, and Bulgaria, to foster social inclusion, and this will ensure prosperity and a better future for all our European community. Thank you for bringing us all together. I'm sure that you have created a great team that will give us many, many good news in the future. And I will also wish you a Merry Christmas and a fruitful done today.
Thank you, Alberto. Antonio. Now, Tina Grgantov, you have the floor. Thank you everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here today to promote this event. Europe is moving sport inclusion through medias. It's a very important topic for everyone and for Slovenia. Sport plays a key role in our country. I would also like to thank España se Mueve for inviting us and for including Slovenia in this event. an event that tries to promote social inclusion and equal opportunities. I would also like to point out the role that media plays in our current society, in how they promote sport as a part of our daily lives. Slovenia is a small country in size, but a big country when it comes to the success of our athletes. Slovenian people love sports. In 1998, a law was passed. This law said that sport is part of the public interest. It's part of our culture. 64% of Slovenian people practice some kind of sports. This is one of the highest percentages in Europe. Healthy lifestyle, sporty hearts, those are factors for Slovenian people. That is why we have so many elite athletes. We are one of the countries that has the most athletes in the world. Some of the most famous Slovenian athletes are also linked to Spain, which is curious. Primož Roglič, a biker that has won the last 3 biking competitions in Spain, football players that also come from Slovenia and also play here in Spain, such as Luka Bonic. Given the importance of sports for Slovenia, we have a special day, the Slovenian Sports Day. What about our media? They play a key role in promoting sports. They try to cover every single success the same way. They cover international competition, winter sports, volleyball, basketball. Thanks to this success that our athletes have, many more are prone to follow. Thanks to our famous bikers, many more started to take up biking as a hobby. Sports play a big role in the development of youth, in the acquisition of social skills. That's why sport is part of our school system. It's mandatory in every single level, even in university. Physical activity is also important for adults, and they shouldn't be discriminated against based on their resources. We have a very good infrastructure for sports in the whole country. During the pandemic, Slovenia also passed some coupons that can be used for physical activity. Lifelong physical activity is one of our main objectives in the government and also in the European Union. We carried out many activities during the European Week for Sports. One of our activities was a conference about lifelong physical activity. And we are also very proud of having organized an event with ONCE and the Council for Sports that's about inclusivity in sports for disabled people. We carried out many researches and we found out that we have to implement new initiatives to promote lifelong physical activities. Over 58% of European people do not do regular physical activity, and over half of the population doesn't do any kind of physical activity. That's why we are here today, to promote the importance of sports in our daily lives, and also to reflect the key role that media plays in this initiative. We cannot forget something. Sport has a big impact in our daily lives, in our health, but it also has a bigger power to connect people from different backgrounds. It also has a social dimension. It's a way to participate in society. Thank you very much, and I hope we will have meaningful conversations today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tina. Now I give the floor to Daisy Petrova from the Bulgarian Embassy. Good morning to you all. First of all, I would like to thank you for this invitation. We are honored to take part in this event. Before someone said mens sana in corpore sano, our ancestors already knew how important is the relationship between mind and body. And sport plays a key role here. We have seen this clearly during the pandemic. And I'm not talking about elite sport, but about daily physical activity for all of us. Bulgaria has a sports policy, which is in charge of the Ministry for Sport and Youth. We promote elite sport, but also grassroots sport and physical activity for all. We do this in accordance to the principles of social inclusion, mutual respect, and fair play. Some of our programs are targeted against school dropout, and they try to boost equality for children and youth in risk. The objective of this program is to create healthy lifestyles and to improve the social integration of these children. We have other programs too. We try to promote school sports and to organize school sport events. We are also carrying out international projects. These projects are dedicated to sports management, like the project Action or the project Move, or also the project Fit to Play, which is dedicated to inclusive sport. We are also taking part in the design and implementation of European policies in this area, and we sit in several committees in the European Union and the Council of Europe. I should also mention Paralympic sport. For example, we are allocating funds to the preparation of Paralympians and to prizes for them. And Spain is a good example of this. Spain has developed Paralympic sports and sport for people with disabilities. And this shows when you look at the results obtained by Spain, because the Spanish team won 36 medals in the last games. We also coordinate the largest sports initiative in Europe, the European Week of Sports. This is an open event, and it is a space to share our experiences and to build relationships. I would also like to highlight the vital role of media in the last years, especially as far as the implementation of sport policies is concerned. During the pandemic, social media became very important too. They helped us send positive messages and to promote healthy lifestyles. We expect they will go on playing this role. I would also like to highlight the role of the Bulgarian Sports Development Association and their role in this European project. This association is quite active in Bulgaria, and also in the rest of the European Union. I think they are the best partner you could have found in Bulgaria. I thank you all, and I hope your project will be successful.
Thank you, Desi. And now we will start sharing the results of the research we carried out. Thank you. So now we will continue. Let me tell you about the framework of our Congress and of our movement. Europe is moving. The name of the Congress is Europe is moving, inclusion through medias. What are we looking for? We want to work with the media. Nowadays, there are many initiatives that are left in the dark. So it's as if they didn't exist. We had an hypothesis that the media doesn't pay enough attention to other types of sports apart from elite sports. And that is why we started this project together with Antonio Saccone from Radio Capodistria and the Bulgarian Sports Development Association with Konstantin, who is also here with us. We also tried to look for countries that complemented each other. We have Bulgaria with about 7 million inhabitants, Slovenia that has about 2 million, and Spain that has 46, and they are also in different parts of Europe. They have different cultures, which also helps us improve the program. And we also wanted to set the foundation for media coverage in sports, for equal opportunity, fair play, social inclusion. We want everyone to work together, not to work together the same path in order to really broadcast everything that we're doing. It will take time. But little by little, we want to set those foundations. We had two parts. First, we carried out a research in every country. 70 entities helped us. We worked with national and international, public and private entities, entities that focused on sports and entities that didn't. This project should have ended last year, but due to COVID, we had to keep researching during this year. But that also allowed us to have more information. Next year, we will also write a memorandum with the results and our final conclusions. Now, what we're going to do is show you those results in Spain, Bulgaria, and Slovenia. Afterwards, they will also give us their point of view and their impressions, and we will give some ideas on improvement. After our break, we will have two roundtables, the first one about media and the second one about organizations that launch projects, initiatives that promote social inclusion through sports. So we want to have both points of view. We want to have a debate about what's the situation, in these 3 countries, it is clear that there's a very big gap to bridge. We have to ensure more commitment. But we also need to do what are the problems. But we also need to find solutions to those problems. So we will give solutions from different points of view. So solutions from media and journalists, from the point of view of organizations. So we have a foundation, a sports club. We also have Antoni here, who's a journalist but has lots of experiences with events because he usually covers those type of events. We also have Konstantin, who comes from the Bulgarian Sports Development Association, and they mainly work in this field. And we also have Marc, who works in España se Mueve, but he will also talk as the president for the Spanish Association of Pickleball, which is a new sport that's very inclusive. Some time ago we had an event to promote pickleball, and we had elderly people playing, we had a child playing, we had someone playing in a wheelchair, and it's the first time that I saw something like that. The same match with so many kinds of people. He will also tell us about his daily experiences. These organizations have many events, and they have them usually regularly, but they don't appear in the press. So Europe is Moving tries to work both fields. In the one hand, have more press coverage, and on the other hand, having these organizations promote their events more. We will soon have an event. I don't know if Antonio or Konstantin know something. Maybe even this week the Commission will give the final results and tell us which projects have been accepted. And we have a project that goes farther in the matter and tries to also work with journalists, with media. I think Antonio will talk about it. Many media have a certain journalist that likes this type of sport and is the one that covers this news, but if they weren't there, there would be no one. So we have to raise awareness. Nowadays, communication has become a part of everyone's life. Maybe these journalists could become more important so that there's more coverage in these types of sports, or maybe the organizations should have initiatives, internal initiatives. So first we will see what are the problems, and then we will give solutions. Then we will have the Foundation for Youth Sports that will also have a representative that comes to talk today. Our president will also talk and give his final conclusions. And I think that's everything I needed to say. Antonio will start, and he will show us the results of the Slovenian investigation. I would like to give you a quick reminder. If you need headphones so that you can listen to the interpretation, there's some at the back of the room.
Is the microphone working, right? So, hello everyone. Thank you.
Hola a todos. Gracias por invitarme. Gracias a los organizadores. Y gracias a los intérpretes. Voy a mostrar en pantalla mi presentación. Mi presentación se divide en 3 partes: una introducción, los resultados de la investigación y finalmente una serie de recomendaciones.
So my name is Antonio Saccone. I'm Italian and I live in Slovenia because I moved. I work for Radio Capodistria, who's the Italian language program of Radio Slovenia. We are basically part of the public broadcasting company, and we are a media reference for the Italian minority, which is settled mostly in the coastline of Slovenia, so very close to Italy. One of the more interesting things of this kind of project is that you can get to know some country which maybe you don't know much about it, and that's often the case of Slovenia. So my question is, how much do you know about Slovenia? And I will go through a quick game, like, can you tell me who's the President of the Republic, who's a former Olympic champion, and who's an actor or an actress? Just think a second. And time is against us, so I start with the President of the Republic. That's Mr. Borut Pahor. It's an active runner, a swimmer, former model, and it's interesting that he makes an interesting use of sport and physical activity also in the public and political communication, basically attending most of the events hosted in Slovenia. This is Tina Maze. She is one of the greatest athletes in Slovenia, one of the person I admire the most. She's also testimonial of the country. She won many races, like 2 Olympic gold medals, 4-time world champion, 1 World Cup, twice, I think, the speciality. And yeah, that's an actor, Boris Kavatsa. Yeah, that's just to conclude the game. Basically, Slovenia has 2 million inhabitants, around 23,000 square kilometers. Just to give you a reference, it's a bit less than Galicia. We have the sea and we have the mountains at very short distance. This means that there is a wide range of sports that are available in the country. And we have a high physical activity rate. So many people take part in grassroots activity, as well as Slovenia usually have a high average of medal on inhabitant and also champion per inhabitant. But this is because many people are physically active. It is interesting, the example of the Sochi Winter Olympic Games, that the country got the same amount of medals as Italy. Italy has around 60 million inhabitants, while Slovenia too, even though the skiing and the winter sport are just in one part of the country. But if we go in the Paralympic sport, then the situation is slightly different. So Slovenia had only 1 athlete. So in the Paralympic sport, the situation is slightly different, like it's not a perfect country. So let's go to the research. Basically, we contacted 11 entities, 10 of which give us feedback. This is why, this is a high participation rate because the interviews they were made mostly face-to-face. What was difficult is that the COVID gave us limited chance to get to the sport press, and also difficulty to interact with the colleagues. Anyway, a wide range of entities, they were involved in the research, with the partial exception of the private public TV. This is because they often are right holders, so they are located in a different position of the sport venues. And basically during the break, for example, of a football match, they are live streaming, so we cannot really talk to. I will go through quickly the result, like basically this is all the entity that they were contacted, like more or less different profile, mostly they were national. This is an interesting slide because we detected many organizations, many media, that they have a specific segment for sport for inclusion, and later we will discover why. It is interesting also the frequency of the relevant expression of sport that we detected. They are basically, daily, often, because they are somehow, they have same status as other expression of sport. It is also interesting that all the item of our research, which was based on different target group, they were represented at least once among the 10 entities that they responded. And it is interesting that if we check the daily frequency, the private media have similar engagement as the public one, which is something we could not expect at the beginning. So let's go to the conclusion of the research. Basically, the coverage of male and female sport in Slovenia is very similar. So the media that they have daily sport news, they consider female or male sport in the very same way. Athlete with disability, the societal or human dimension of elite sport event, and many events outside of the sport calendar, the official sport calendar, they are also regularly covered. And all the variables in our research, they were mentioned at least once. And some entities have specific section dedicated to sport activity related to inclusion and equal opportunity. Obviously, the media, that they are based on non-profit model, so they can be public or private. It is interesting that we engaged also Radio Student, which is the radio of the student organization. They are technically private, but they respond to non-for-profit model. They are also very engaged in this segment. Of course, in our research, there were also media broadcasting for the Italian ethnic minority, so this also, of course, this kind of sporting events are very relevant for this kind of media. The point is that Slovenian media, they pay a lot of attention, but also Slovenian society in general, to any successful Slovenian athlete, independently from any variable. They can be young athlete, they can be male, female, athlete with disability, it does not matter. And Slovenian, media, they also cover very different sport discipline. This means that all the items in our research, they were present. And of course, the fact that the successful athletes are represented into the media, this stimulates a lot of mostly young people to be physically active, because when you see, for example, a female athlete which gets a big recognition, and is the case, for example, of Tina Maze, many young girls, they are motivated to start. It is very important also the awareness of the journalists. So of course, the journalists, that they are more sensitive to this topic, they are most likely to cover them. And it is also interesting to underline that in Slovenia there are many grassroots events with a high participation. So this means that many people take part, so they are appealing for the media. So this is why a lot of media, they create specific section of the newspaper or specific section inside the TV program for grassroots sporting event, because there are many people that take part in it. For example, the Ljubljana Marathon has a high participation. Fine. It was another slide, it didn't came. Let's go to the event organizers. Basically, my input is that the event organizer in this kind of segment should be more aware of the media routine and to find the most appropriate media and the most appropriate journalist to work with. For many reasons, often the media, they have less journalists than necessary. For many media, they are very difficult economic time. So we have a need of fulfilling the space, and sometimes we work under many constrictions like time pressure and so on. So it's very important to have a good communication with the event organizer. At the same time, I think we have also a big need of creating new narrative for this kind of events, because I think there is public which is very interested, but there is a high competition in the media environment. If we check social media or any kind of media, it's a big fight to get the public attention, so we need a new creative way to present also the sport for inclusion. We have also an issue, I think, for the event organizer, that they should be flexible enough to reshape the communication of their event, maybe not addressing specifically the sports section, but also other kind of chapter within the media. So, for example, to go into the local chronicle, to go in the program for children, in the program for elderly people, because this event is really, a bit is a sporting event, a bit is also a societal event. On the other side, it's also true that the journalists and the media should be more aware of this kind of expression of sport, because I think this is one of the ways why sport created added value, so when you have a benefit for the overall society. The slide that was missing was basically an overview about the different media that they exist. We have public media, private media, commercial media, non-commercial media, local media, media more specific, like that they address economy, sport, gossip, or any other, or more generalistic. We have media that they are online, offline, radio, TV. I think the media, they should inform, create public debate, and entertain people. So I think my final message for the event organizer is that what they are doing is very interesting. It's just about finding the right channel to communicate it. So not to get stuck on one channel, but try to figure it out which one can be the best. So with this, I'm done. Thank you very much. If you have any feedback, question, comment, compliment, I'm here. Thank you. Mark. Time?
Now Konstantin from
from the Bulgarian Sports Development Association will have the floor. Thank you very much, Konstantin.
Hello. First of all, I want to thank really for the organization of this international congress and also for leading the project to Fernando and Marc. And on behalf of Bulgarian Sports Development Association, we're really happy to be part of this project and can see that we can succeed together. First of all, I will focus on the research. Of course, if you want to know some more details about Bulgarian sports, non-government organizations and the different organizations, I will be happy to share you after the presentation. We contacted about 120 entities and also sent emails about 390 journalists. We have provided information from 23 entities, so the participation rate is about 20% of the people. In Bulgaria, we have 87% of private entities and about 13 the public one, which they took part in the research. The most of them is general media, and about 35% is sport media, focused in the sport news. On this slide, you can see the channel type which they communicate. Of course, in 2021 and 2020, we are also talking a lot about online coverage, not only about the traditional media channels. So we are doing also the online and offline synergy of communications. Here you can see the types of the media entities which took part in the research. About 70% of them are on national level, 26 international, and just 4% of them on regular, original level. The thing in Bulgaria is that in our media web pages and in our media programs, we don't have any special part, any permanent section about social inclusion with sports, so the topic of our project. So we have like the general news in sports, different interviews, different coverage, but we are talking mostly about public sports, not about the social inclusion via sport, and also the focus on our project. So this is something on which we can work in the future. Of course, we have a good coverage about campaigns, news, reports, interviews, and most of the Bulgarian sports campaigns, including the social inclusion and different type of initiative, they're occasionally. We don't have like yearly campaign of something or weekly, monthly. Usually we are doing it occasionally. The audience of the medias which were covered by the event is the general public. We don't have like something specific media coverage or something like this. Here you can see the media action, contents, topics. There are different topics and content covered by the media. And the key points of the research. Of course, we have some good practices, which we will be happy to share also in the other two panels, from the medias and from organizations working with medias. We have a good inspiration how the things can be done. We have the corporate social responsibility, which is really important also for the media and for the companies. And recommendations for the media, here you can see the most of them according to our research. Of course, we have to inspire, to empower, and to be the leader of the positive story all around us. Of course, some of the things are covering with the things which Antonio said in the before presentation, but we should communicate in the proper way our campaigns, our news, so that we could go directly to our target groups. And here are the recommendations for the sports organization. Of course, you should work also with the stakeholders, also with the medias, and to succeed a sustainable cooperation with the medias, and to have a good coverage during the whole year, and to work in an active way. Thank you for now.
Muchas gracias, Konstantin. Y ahora damos paso a Marc Declercq de España se mueve, que va a exponer los resultados.
And now I give the floor to Marc Declercq from España se mueve, who will share the findings of the Spanish research. Good morning to all. Thank you to my Bulgarian, Slovenian colleagues. As you can hear, my English is much easier to understand. Well, thank you for the information. Now I will share the findings of our research. And I would like to explain our methodology. This is a European project. It must fulfill some requirements, and all partners have to work together, because this is not just an exchange, it's a research project. And the three partners have developed together a methodology and a series of tools to carry out this research. So there are many hours of preparation of the survey. We have used the same survey, the same documents. Otherwise, the findings of the research would have no value. We have contacted 38 entities. Most of them were national media. It was difficult to reach all autonomous communities in Spain. But of course, we know that many media have branches in different regions of Spain. The rate of answers has been quite low. We have sent the survey in different ways, email, social media, but our participation rate is about 21%. And this is the material we have to carry out our study. In Spain, most media are private, at least those who have answered to a survey, 84%. This is relevant to we have tried to contact both private and public media, but private media have been more active to answer our survey. And I think this is a relevant finding. And most of the answers we have got came from general media, not from sports media. Another relevant information. This research was carried out both before and after COVID, and there have been changes in the media. They have changed the way to cover the news. And most of the media who answered our survey were online and offline media. This slide shows the same graphic our partners have shown before.
Mucha de la información que facilitan los medios de comunicación se transmite a través de las webs o
These are the ways the media use to spread the news.
Servimedia, que son entidades que tocan muchos campos en el mundo del deporte inclusivo.
There are entities who have an impact in different fields of inclusive sport. As we did not have resources enough to reach media in all regions and in all parts of Spain, we have focused on national media, even if we know that some of our national media have also a global coverage. 75% of these media don't have a specific section from sports, let alone inclusive sports. The type of action used to spread the news about inclusive sport events, the main way is interviews, features, news, but there is 8% of this media who does nothing to spread this news. The frequency of this coverage, occasional, sometimes there is not regular coverage of these events. Things come up and then you cover the news and then forget until the next time. And about the audience, we are talking about general audience. And this is relevant. The audience in general is quite demanding. We'll talk about this later. It's difficult for media to cover local events or regional events, but the audience demands this information. People are interested in the local club or the local team. And of course, sport practice is local. You go to your gym or to your park. And you can take part in sport events, but of course you need some information about this event, because you cannot take part in it if you don't know that it's taking place. And about the topics covered in the media, 70% of media covered different topics related to our field. Some media are more specialized in sport for people with disabilities. I have to mention this. The project is focused on what the European Commission calls inclusive sport. And inclusive sport is not just sport for people with disabilities. It's also sport for families, for children, for elderly people, for people from different backgrounds. Fernando mentioned this before. Last week, we had a sports event where we could see something quite unusual. A professional athlete playing with someone with learning disability or with a 12-year-old child. And I can tell you this, these people enjoyed the event. This was pickleball, but you can meet this goal with other events. So inclusion does not mean people with disability play with people with disability and children play with children. The goal is for everyone to practice in sport. To sum up, we have seen some interesting things. There is not a strong commitment among the media. Very few entities are interested in inclusive sport. This is a fact. 75 of them don't have a specific section for this. Few specialized media cover inclusive sport. Of course, España se mueve or Servimedia do deal with this subject. And it's a pity because there are so many things that could boost social inclusion and healthy lifestyles. Fernando mentioned this before too. We have a person who covers the news related to the Olympic Games, and he's a freelance journalist. And he volunteers to cover the inclusive sports events, but not because the media demand this coverage. It's because he's committed to spreading information about these events. We have explained the difference between inclusive sport and people for sports with disabilities. And we have some recommendations for the media. We will issue a final report with some guidelines for the media. And this part of the report is important. We expect the European Commission to take into account our recommendations and to include them in next contracts or next projects. But these guidelines are also interesting for local or regional authorities, because our goal is to promote these sports. And we expect that we will have further projects. Our intention is to work on and to go working on this area. And which are these recommendations? Well, we would like the media to create specific sections to cover inclusive sport. We should train the journalists. We are opting to another project, and this project will focus on the training for journalists. So media, authorities, and everyone involved should change their mindset. And this includes the audiences too. And I hope we will hear more recommendations in the round tables that we will have after the break. We will try to reach new conclusions and to share new findings so we can work together to improve the media environment and as soon as possible. Thank you all.
Fernando.
Muchas gracias, Marc.
Thank you, Marc.
A continuación voy a hacer una comparativa.
Now I would like to compare the three countries.
Hemos visto cada uno individualmente.
We've taken a look at each country individually, and now we just want to have a bigger picture. And I would also like to thank Inés Corona and Elena de la Vega. They are our interpreters, and they are right now working in the shadows. But their job is one of the most important ones, because it allows people from all of Europe to listen to us. First things first. So it's a pilot project. We're just beginning. And we are working for the European Commission. It's not a very exhaustive research. We just want to set the foundations to keep on building on. We want to get the bigger picture. We want to rule out or not our hypothesis, that is that media don't pay enough coverage to this topic. I would also like to mark what Marc said. Inclusive sports is just not about is not just about people with disabilities. There's also sports with different generations, the social dimension in sports. I have forgotten the ratio, but over 90% of people don't play elite sports. They just play with their friends, with their family, or individually. Nowadays, it's very common to go out running. But the pandemic has deeply affected that social dimension of sports. In Spain, we put a big emphasis on the contact between people, on giving each other 2 kisses to say hello. But due to the pandemic, that tradition has been lost. So inclusivity in sports is more and more important from my point of view. It allows us to reconnect with other people, to reconnect with other people in general, but also with your own family. You might not have seen your father in a long time, but for example, in that event, I played pickleball with my father. And that is hard in other sports. Pickleball is a sport that adapts to your own level. You can play it in a more elite way or not. And that is something that is very important in the European projects. Healthy lifestyle is also a key component. Grassroots sports, physical activity. We also put an emphasis on equality in every country. Many public exams nowadays are forced to have equality programs. Inclusion. Those are very important aspects, and they all are the keystones of sports. Many say that there's a vicious circle, that people don't ask for inclusive sports, so we don't cover it in the media, and that's what we want to change. Ritmo di Sport, Antonio's program, is a program that focuses on this topic, and it broadcasts every single day of the year. Many media do it as follows. They cover an event, but then they forget about it. There's no daily work. And that's something that we will address in our roundtables afterwards. Media. Media is one of our keystones in this project. they have a big responsibility. If it's not lucrative enough, I won't do it. That's not enough. Media should not just be media. They should also be agents of change. They should foster improvement. They should try to raise awareness amongst the people so that everyone tries a little. And Spain wants to be an agent of change in this situation. So participation rate. Let's get back to it. We had information given by some entities. This is the information that we have taken into account, and it's the rate that appears on the screen. We sent emails, we called. I think Antonio already said it. He had face-to-face meetings. And that's how we got the information. 38 media were contacted. The rest, we had to look for ourselves. Only 8 of those 38 answered our survey. That's frustrating. But it also tells us that we are following a path that should be followed. Slovenia has a 90% rate of participation rate. Nonetheless, Bulgaria and Slovenia have problems right now with COVID. Antonio knows many people in the media field because he works in it. And so he could meet face-to-face with those people. But in our case, we didn't have that advantage. So we can verify the hypothesis we started out with. There's no commitment. I shouldn't be following you around trying to get the information. It only takes 20 minutes. If you believe in it, you would do it. And that's one of the most interesting aspects of our project. Slovenia is very particular because it has such a high participation rate. But Bulgaria and Spain don't have such a high participation rate. I won't go into further detail. We talked with private and public entities. Both Bulgaria and Spain had a higher participation rate from private entities. Slovenia is about half and half. Second slide, type of entity. Both Slovenia and Spain were general media, the ones that answered. In general, we had more answer from general media. Now, this is interesting. Marc already talked about it. And it's also interesting for our roundtables down the line. There are two main types media can get organized. Has permanent sections, and if I have a permanent section, I have to fulfill it. The other option is, instead of having permanent sections, working with inclusive content one by one. That's what we do in España se mueve. If I'm not wrong, we don't have a certain section dedicated to a certain type of people or to inclusive sports. We just cover everything. We don't make a distinction between elite sports, grassroots sports, inclusive sports. We cover it all, and we think that's how it should be. Madrid se mueve is a TV program that we have, and maybe it's an inclusive program because that's the goal we are after, but we think that it should be that way. Should every type of media have a permanent section about inclusive sports? Should we just try to cover every single type of event? Well, we should take a look at a strategy to answer that. Let's take a look at the data. In Slovenia, we can see how committed they are, but Bulgaria and Spain, they don't have a permanent section. And we will also talk about the frequency of these publications. Okay, so frequency. It's not enough to have content. It should also be regular content. I try to have inclusive journalism. I cover women's sports, sports for people with disabilities, but how many times did you write something in the last month? Maybe 2, 3. It's not enough to cover them. They should also be covered regularly. So that's why this slide is very interesting. It could be improved, but Slovenia has a very regular content. Almost every day there's something. But what about Spain or Bulgaria? Look at it. Bulgaria, 100% occasionally. And Spain is also very high, that percentage. We have a 23% regularly frequency, but that's not high enough. It's normal that they have more resources for elite sports, but they should try to bridge the gap. That's the role that media should play. There should be a shift in paradigm. What about the audience? This is also important. So, who's the target audience? Slovenia, general public, mainly. But there's also specific public. But Bulgaria and Spain are more focused on general public. Spain also has a little bit of content created for professional public in sports.com, deporte.com in Spanish. Should we have content for everyone? Should we have more specific media? Not only media that focuses on inclusive sports, but also a type of media that focuses on inclusive sports and is made for a more professional public. Should there be different sections for different target audiences? Those are just some ideas. Let's take a look at the topics. There are many different types of topics. So that is good. And that's everything I wanted to say. Now we will have a break. It's 30:30, 10:30, excuse me.
Okay, can I speak here? Yes. Okay, just to build upon what you said, was a very nice overview. Thank you very much for it. I just would like to clean the research from the optical illusion, because Slovenia is a country with 2 million people, the province of Milan is around 3.5. So a national media in Slovenia, in another country, could be a local one. So this is also something we should reflect upon. So when you have a local media and one athlete from a small community get a result, he will most likely, or she, will most likely get more visibility. And then I just would like to underline the category upon which we build the research. So basically we went to the media and we asked them if and how much they cover grassroots sport activities. And then all the events outside the official sport calendar, so basically the non-competitive one, the children's sport, the sport program for ethnic minorities, the sport related to people with disability, and then women and gender minority. And then we had migrants and refugees, people with low income, elderly people, other kind of disadvantaged group that we have not really got it. And then also the societal and human dimension of elite sporting event. This means that also when you have a sporting event, you can also describe it in a way which is not just focused on what is going on the pitch. Just to add some few elements and just to have it more clear overview on what it was done. So thank you so much.
Sí, la verdad es que es interesante esto que has dicho, Antonio, porque hay que tenerlo en cuenta, ¿no? El tamaño y también
It's interesting what you have been telling us, Antonio. This is one of the reasons why we chose these three countries, but we cannot extrapolate these findings to a European level. As you have seen, these three countries are very different, and the population in Slovenia and Bulgaria is much smaller than in Spain. So maybe in a future project, we will have the opportunity to work again on this research and to compare with more countries. So this is a pilot experience, and we have two goals. One, to create the foundations for future projects at the European level. And second, to verify our starting hypothesis. And we are verifying it, but of course we have this Slovenian peculiarity. Maybe it was easier for him to contact the media, but at any rate, it's clear that the media focus on elite sport and they focus on what brings them more revenues. And we should break this vicious circle. I think that Marc could confirm that this is quite important for the European Commission. You take a newspaper and you read the headlines, and it deals with Real Madrid. And you read further, and then you can find a really tiny piece of news, or you can have a longer news, but it's because the media is taking part in that particular event. At least we have information about these two countries. There are many, many media in Spain, and it's significant in comparison with the whole sample. Well, now it's 25 to 11. We are more or less on schedule, and we will have an hour coffee break. There will be coffee for all, especially for those who have not had breakfast. And we will be back in 30 minutes for the two round tables.
No sé si tenéis que devolver los cascos mientras bajáis y luego lo recuperáis otra vez, ¿vale? Pero estáis todos invitados, obviamente, a
Sí, con el tema de los cascos, estaban ahí puestos, ¿no?
Están ahí.
Bueno, pues los podemos dejar donde estaban y luego los cogemos de nuevo. Para que estén ordenados, ¿sí?
Pues ya está. Sí, nos dicen que sí.
Vale, venga, pues los dejamos ahí y luego los recuperamos.
Ahora nos vemos. Gracias.
Perfecto, hasta ahora.
So we'll be back in half an hour. Thank you.
Bueno, pues vamos a seguir con
Okay, so let's continue.
va a tener lugar la mesa dedicada a medios de comunicación. Entonces,
Now we will have a roundtable about media. We have representatives from different media. We have Antonio Saccone from Slovenia.
Ritmo di Sport,
He has a radio program, a Ritmo di Sport. Hello, Antonio. We also have José Manuel González Huesa. He's CEO in Servimedia. Welcome, José Manuel. We also have here Juan Manuel. He is the Secretary General for the Madrid Sport Press Association. We also have Konstantin Zankov, who's representing Bulgaria in our roundtable. Hello, Konstantin. And we also have Fernando Soria Dorado. He's a journalist. He's the president in España Se Mueve. He's also the head of different sports magazine and websites and some other types of media. And welcome, Fernando. Without further ado, let's start our roundtable. Juanma, go ahead. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this roundtable in this conference. Communication comes from the Latin communicatio, and it means to treat, to have conversations between two or more people. We're going to be talking about also about sports as well. And we are going to talk about the relationship of communication and sports. Without communication, we have nothing. Everything needs to be communicated. What's the role of communication in sports? Are we using it correctly? Are we using the appropriate tools to get to the public? Those are all the questions that we are going to be dealing with today. We have a very impressive number of collaborators here. So let's start playing. First question, what's the importance of inclusive sports in our society? And let's start with José Manuel.
Sí.
How important is inclusive sport in our society? Well, I think it's all important. The more diverse and inclusive a society is, the richer it is, because every group gets to be represented. Let's take the case of people with disabilities. That's 10% of the population. And we have also to mention women and other groups. So inclusive sport is necessary for our society, but we have to find ways to make it real. Let's think about the Paralympic Games. They took place in Tokyo, and they had media coverage, but nothing to do with the coverage of other events. I was talking about 1992 and the Olympic Games in Barcelona, and it was a great change in the Olympic and Paralympic system. But afterwards, we crossed a desert until 2004 in Athens. Then I was the press officer for the ONCE, and we got funds from the International Paralympic Committee to send journalists to cover the Paralympic Games in Athens. And from 1992 to 2004, we had no coverage at all of these events.
Fernando, director of España Se Mueve. What's the concept inclusive sports and what is its importance? Well, I think this is a very important word. And I think you mean me, but my son also talked about it before. Inclusive sports is not just about sports for people with disabilities. It's also about children's sports that might or might not be elite, sports for elderly, just physical activity, walking, women in sports. everything that's not up to standard with professional or elite sports. And why is it so important? It is very important. Let's not talk about elite sports, just about semi-professional sports. There's a big number of women and men who do sports semi-professionally. There's less people who practice sports in a non-professional way, less than we would want to. But there's at least a small percentage of the population that does practice some type of sports. It's almost 20 million more people who do sports non-professionally than they do semi-professionally. And we should also pay attention to those people. How important should it be? Juanma, it should be very important. It should be the most important, but in the media nowadays it's not so important.
Let's go forward in this discussion. And we will now focus on other countries. We have here Antonio and Konstantin from other countries. Antonio, Slovenia is a good example in many areas. What's the situation of inclusive sport in your country?
Well, it is true in a way that in Slovenia the level of physical activity is higher than other countries, but if we focus, for example, of the segment of population having some form of disability, then the situation is much more complicated. Why? Because Slovenia has 2 million people, the capital is Ljubljana, which has around 300,000 people, but the people with disability, they are located throughout the country. So this means that they live sometime in small community, and then it's complicated to provide these people with appropriate sport programs. So at the national level, most likely, the team and the athlete with a disability living in Ljubljana, they usually win, because they are better than the other, maybe, but because they train regularly. Because you have more people, so you can make a team and you can organize the program. Going back to your interesting question, what I try to do in my work and what I really believe it's fair is that every child, every person has the right to access sport, has the right to choose the sport he or she likes. And let me underline that I don't see a big difference between sport, game, and physical activity. I see them as a continuum. And this is, for me, the starting point, because we are all aware that there is a correlation between physical activity, sport practice, and many benefits that you can get, like as a person, on your body, on your social life. And if sport doesn't generate any kind of added value, it became pointless in a way. It's just a competition of 20 people, 10 and 10 in a football pitch, but this has no impact. If you check what is the main impact of that sport have, is the impact that have on the people on daily life. And I understand that people physically active for recreational level are much more than the champions, but the champion, they are more appealing for the people. Because when we are kids, we have everyone our idol, and we start to play any sport because we want to become a champion. Then not everyone makes it, so I think we should have another path or other model for those that they don't succeed. So to keep the passion, to keep the passion for the sport, and give them the chance to keep on playing or following, and to still be engaged in sport.
Es importante la cuestión every person, es decir, realmente hay un pleno conocimiento o entendimiento en vuestro país.
Your country deeply understands what inclusive sports are about. Is it? So people firmly believe that inclusive sports are important in your country, as that's what you said?
I say that in Slovenia, for, let's say, people without disability, it's relatively easy to find the sport you like, because in a small territory, we go from the sea to the mountain, so you have from the swimming to the ski jump. So you can easily find a discipline that you can like. But when you go with the people with disability, this is more complicated, because they are living in all the country. They don't live just in Ljubljana. So in Ljubljana, you have more people, so there are more programs. So you can find, I don't know, sitting volleyball, sitting basketball, the sport you like. When you live in a small community, it's more complicated, because it's a matter of program, it's a matter of infrastructure, it's a matter of accessibility, it's a matter of other barrier, for example, cultural one, that they can be an obstacle for a young person with a disability to the participation in the society, not just in the sport. Because of course, on one side, for the people with disability, the life in the biggest city, it's in a way easier, because then you have a number of people that can make sustainable a sport program, for example. While in a small community, if you have one person with a given kind of disability, it's complicated to make a big offer of sport discipline. Is it clear?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Antonio. Konstantin, the same question.
Konstantin, I want to pose the same question. Which is the situation of inclusive sport in Bulgaria?
It's quite the same. Of course, it's very important for our community because we know that we should develop a community together. And for everybody, we should have a common life together. So it's really important everybody to practice sport, to find the good sports for everybody, and to do it like really more often and more often. Like in Slovenia, in the capital city and in the big cities, it's very, very easy to have a good sport, also to make a community together with people, but in the small villages it's a little bit more complicated and more difficult. For example, in our organization, we developed a tool. It's a mobile application and also a tool in our webpage, when everybody can find easily the sport clubs and everything in their area. For example, you can find the best sports which you can practice for free in the beginning, and after that, of course, if you want to continue to pay, to find the club and to find everything. So it's important, and step by step we are become better and better in Bulgaria.
Okay, step by step. Bueno, señores, seguimos avanzando en el coloquio.
So let's go on ahead. It's obvious that inclusive sport is important, but we have nothing if we have no communication. So how does communication impact this type of sports? And a further question, are we really using all the tools that we have to get to our audiences? Okay, so José Manuel, go on ahead.
Bueno, pues la verdad es que no. Te diría que
Well, I would say we are not.
el otro día se hizo un acto muy bonito que hizo
The other day we had an event
un homenaje a
from the
todos
Spanish
los medios de
committee,
comunicación que han
and
acudido
they
a
paid
este acto
homage
y
to all the media and the press people that went to Tokyo.
y el portavoz del deporte para ciegos en este caso
And
decía
the relator for blind sports said that it's very nice to go to the Paralympics every 4 years, but there are competitions in those 4 years and no one talks about it. It was just celebrated in Madrid at competition for seated basketball, and only 4 or 3 media covered it, and they were the specific media, but general types of media didn't. We need more communication. We have the appropriate tools. There are stories to tell. Let me give you an example. Do you know who's the only athlete that has appeared in the Time? She's Susana Rodríguez. You can look it up. And she appeared in the Time magazine. And she won a gold medal in Tokyo. But she's also a doctor. And she's the only athlete that has appeared in a magazine. So,
now, Fernando, your program, Madrid Se Mueve, is a good example of these practices. What should we do to cover these activities? What should we do? What José Manuel was explaining before. We have to engage the attention of the media. We have said something before. Media had to be agents for change. And they have to change their mindsets and their behaviors, even if this is not bringing any direct revenue. I think that media in general should allocate more time, space to these issues. First of all, to the sport for people with disabilities, but also to other types of sport. During the coffee break, I was having a conversation about this. There should be a regular section in the media about this subject. There is a great difference if there isn't. Let's take the example of the sport for people with disabilities. And of course, we are not talking just about this type of sport. But what happens if we have a section in a newspaper devoted to the sport with people with disabilities? Well, there is a risk. Some people will not be interested and they will skip these pages. So we will not have the impact we want. Things should be presented as a whole. So when we have a grassroots sports event or a women's sports event, this should have a space in the media. And this coverage should be regular. So I'm not for a specific section, but it is true when there is not regular coverage of these events. That should be other requirements. We should have a quota of space and attention allocated to these events. I think that media should engage to have 10% or any space allocated to these other aspects of sport, to sport which is not elite, high-level professional sport. And I think this is the way to follow. We don't need a specific section. We don't need a TV program allocated exclusively to Paralympic sport, because many people in the audience will not be interested in this program. But if we have a general program which covers news about Rafa Nadal, which covers news about Real Madrid or Fernando Alonso, and you include some stories about Paralympic sports, we could attract the audience. And there are ways to tell beautiful, wonderful stories about Paralympic sports. as the ones we have shown in Madrid se Mueve. So maybe when the audience sees the beginning of this news, he will go on watching. And this will have a bigger impact than a specific program. And I think this is the right approach.
This room is full of young people. Journalism is all about making questions. So I would like to ask everyone here, why? Why is this type of journalism not the most prevalent one? Is it because it's not cost effective? But have they even bothered to research whether it's cost effective? Let's talk football. Some type of football events have no coverage. What's the matter with journalism? Why aren't they paying enough attention? Are journalists aware of the importance of sports? So who is going to answer? So I would just like to continue what Fernando was saying. If you watch any TV channel, let's talk Antena 3 or National Spanish TV. Teresa Perales has a news report, and I'm sure it will be the most viewed program that day or that week. Why? What should we be doing? Journalism. We should have good research, we should take a good look at it, create an attractive environment. In the last Paralympics was done. Every day, the different Paralympic athlete was covered. It was done that way because of the time difference with Rio. So we had a feature on that athlete, and it was the most viewed feature that day. You have to allocate time and effort and the correct requirements. Sometimes people just want to follow the easy path and go and have a reportage on football.
For all our audience in Europe, maybe they don't know who Teresa Perales is. Could we explain? Well, Teresa Perales is the Paralympic athlete who has won more medals ever. She has one medal less than Michael Phelps, and she's a swimmer. So, Antonio, Konstantin, so maybe the obstacle is not outside the media. Maybe the obstacle is in the media. Any view?
It's definitely possible. I mean, a bit is outside, because I think there is sometimes a lack of communication skills in many organizations that they are active in the, let's say, sport for inclusion. On the other side, there is also an issue inside the media. In one side, from one point of view, is that many media are now in difficult period, economically speaking. This means that sometimes they are with less staff that they should do. Maybe the journalists, they work under time pressure. They have a lot of articles to do. There is no time to do appropriate research. And then sometimes to find the right story takes time. I also think that there are two categories of sport journalists. The one that they want to be champion, they did not manage, so they are angry. And the one that they have a big passion for sports, so they manage, and so they really work with all their passion, whatever. What I think is that we should keep in mind that there is a big, strong shortcut between the elite and the grassroots. When I interview many champions, I really like to ask, why did you start to practice the sport you practice? Did you have any sport idol? Do you ever think that between the people that they follow you, they are the children? What is your relation with selfie, with social media? And sometimes you get really interesting answers, and I have to be honest, sometimes to work with a young athlete, it's easier because they are used to communicate 24/7. So according to how you put the question, you get the answer. So, and many times a message delivered by a champion is way stronger than the message we can deliver. So I think we should also be good in get the most out of the champion. If you check what happened in the pandemics, in the first lockdown, we were all suffering. We would all paid, I don't know how many euro to see a third-level football match with nothing, just to have something, just to watch it. Like we would have, at least in Italy, but also in Slovenia, many champions through the social media, they were really delivering positive message to the people, because we think that the champion is the one that always wins, which is true. But the champion is also the one that can stand up when he falls or she falls. And in a moment of difficult time, I think they had really the mental strength to see the positive, to make themselves stronger for the comeback. And this is something which during the pandemic, when I was keeping on working, I was really receiving strong message by the athlete that they were trying to motivate people not to give up. And let me tell just two things which came to my mind while I was listening. A few weeks ago, AC Milan came to Madrid and won 1-0 with Jesus Messias that he scored. And he has a very interesting story because he arrived to Italy for work, he joined the brother, and at the beginning he had no document. So he could play only in this football tournament called Ballon Mondial. This is an association that they organize a sort of World Cup for the people living in Turin. So the Brazilian in Turin, they make the team, the Moroccan, they make their team, and he was playing just there. And he was unbelievably good. So every second day, someone was going and asking if they could get him play, and then it was no chance because he had no document. Then in a few years, he made to the top. He arrived to AC Milan, he scored in Champions League. That was an amazing story. In my show, I had the organizer of this tournament, and he told me this story. So there is a clear connection between even the inclusive sport and the elite. And when you speak with the footballer, for example, sometimes I had cases of players that they could not figure it out what is racism. Why? Because in their football team, they have people from across the world of every religion. So maybe until you are in sport environment, you give it for granted, but when you go outside, this is not so granted. Paralympic sport. In Italy, we had, in the Paralympic Games, we had quite successful result. In our region, let's say close to Trieste, there is this guy, 18 years old, he qualified for ping pong, para ping pong, and he was nominated to be the flag, he had the Italian flag at the closing ceremony. He is Italian, he plays for a sport club which promote ping pong. They have no correlation with athletes with disability, but they gave him the chance to play. So he plays in the first team, he plays against people without disability, and they won the league last year, so now they are in the second ping pong league. So in a club which is mostly Slovenian, they welcome an Italian with a disability and they make him play. Why? Because he plays. Here we have, I think in the Paralympic sport, we have a big problem of narrative, at least in Italy, and partially in Slovenia, because we have no middle measure between heroism, so those people that they want to inspire people, or a sort of charity approach, that those poor people, they are there, that they want to stimulate our heart. Not at all. An athlete with a disability who wants to compete and to train as any other athlete. It's just sport. I think what we can do as a journalist is to speak about sport, taking it as a sport, without going too much in any, I don't know how to say, speak about sport in relation with the society. And for me, the Paralympic sport is so much fun. I go to see every year in Kranjska Gora the Paralympic skiing. I cannot ski, but I see those people with a disability, so non-ability, that they can ski, but I cannot. So who's disabled? Me, because I'm not capable of doing something they can. And if you check the Olympic skiing, they all have the same movement. They have all the same technique. But when you see the Paralympic sport, each athlete readapt the movement according to his ability. And it's amazing, it's so fun. I mean, it's so much fun, the Paralympic sport than the Olympic one. So I really think that with a different narrative, many people would watch it. Like, so we can keep on treat the people with a disability as a poor people or disadvantaged one, or we can take them as an athlete like everyone else is. Like, for me, there is no difference between a gold medal in the Paralympic or a gold medal in the Olympic. They are both the best in their category, and this is how they should be treated, as athletes. Full stop. Yeah.
Okay, bueno, somos aquí muchos periodistas y no solamente la
So there are many journalists here, and we are not always at fault. It's true that sometimes this type of sports don't appear enough in the media. But now I would like to have Antonio's answer. Schools. Another big factor in sports are schools. Should schools teach values about the importance of inclusive sports? Wouldn't that lead to a bigger public demand for inclusive sports? Antonio? I think, sorry, Konstantin.
Yes, they should teach, of course. Of course, it's important because we should start from the childhood about this. And in this case, I should tell also about the NGOs, about organizations, about the media, that we have to think digital. Because the children and everybody, they're digital. So we are not using only the traditional media, we are using the social media channels like TikTok, like Instagram, like Facebook, because everybody is there. And we should be there where our audience is. So if you want to communicate with digital people, we should be on the right place to be in the digital platforms, not only in the televisions, in the magazines, and in the radio. So we should develop a synergy in these communication things. You know, it's all about storytelling. It's all about storytelling, but on the right place, in the right time.
Venga, Fernando, José Manuel, hablad un poquito del papel que debería jugar en
Fernando, José Manuel, I would like you to tell us about the attitude of the education system. Well, I think there is a key point. Schools. They say that someone gets to improve their physical ability since birth. Of course, babies cannot do a lot of things, but children improve. So school is the starting point. That's where we have to make children aware of the importance of sport. They must know that sport is a tool for inclusion, a tool for social skills, and also it's fun. Both at an individual or team level. So, sport practice should be constant, all lifelong. And we have to introduce children to physical activity, and children can help their parents or their grandparents to change their attitudes. Let's imagine a child asks their parents to practice some sport the weekend. So the child is promoting physical activity in their parents and grandparents. But there is a catch. What happens with the curriculum in Spanish schools? Well, the time allocated to physical education at the school has decreased. There is a mandatory minimum of time allocated to physical education, and the rest depends on the decision of each school or community. However, the public authorities and the people at the Ministry for Sport still view sport as a competition. Some of my colleagues have explained this before. Sport is a tool. It's a tool that we will have to use during all our life.
José Manuel, please. Yes, I would like to give an example. Most of blind boys and girls in Spain study inclusive education. This is a project. By the way, Fernando, I also became a grandparent recently, so congratulations. So when you go to a school, you can see someone who's blind, who has a wheelchair, but they are in the same classroom. And children just go about it normally, and they will bring that into their adult lives. It enriches our society, makes for a more inclusive society. And I think this is a key factor. We have to include people with disabilities in our schools. We shouldn't send them away to different schools. That also boosts inclusivity.
José Manuel, there is something related to what you have said. We have still a long way ahead. When I was young, boys and girls did not share rooms in a school. And of course, there are different children. There are taller or smaller children, clever or less clever children. Not all children are the same. And now we say this is something quite ordinary, nothing out of the common. And we should see the same with children with disabilities.
So before our proposals, I want to bring another topic. Maybe people who want to broadcast, who want to change where inclusive sports are located, maybe those people are wrong? Shouldn't we be trying to use different types of media to cover these stories? No, I agree with Fernando. We should be talking sports. That's it. One day maybe football, one day maybe basketball, maybe then the female volleyball team, then Paralympics. There's this new project that aims to integrate every single type of competition inside a federation, so that Paralympic and Olympic athletes share infrastructures, because before they had different infrastructures, so they had to go further away to practice their sports. And also where the message is allocated. Let me give you an example. Donna Pastram. She's a very important boxer, an elite boxer, and she's been very important for female boxing in Spain. She served as a role model. It's not so usual to have a female boxer, but her success has been more broadcasted in a certain type of media that's not sports media. Maybe should their messages appear in general media instead of sports media? Yeah, I believe that we should be just talking about journalism. If something is a good story, we should tell it. Who knew Carolina Marin? Who knew badminton 5 years ago in Spain? Almost no one. Has anyone played badminton here? Well, thanks to Carolina Marin, who also appeared in Marca, a sports magazine. Now badminton is a usual topic in media, and that's what we should be doing. So for that we need journalism, and we also need a good piece of news, something that's attractive.
It's a pity, but we are running out of time. And I've got the most complex question for the end. What should we do now? How could we improve things? Antonio?
I really believe that we should be the change we want to see in the other. So it's easier to tell the other what they should do. It's much more complicated to change our dynamic and ourselves. So I think that it's very important, another aspect, which is the freedom for the journalist. So each journalist should be free to decide what to put in media according to his value and his independence. And this is a slide I could not show before. I think there are so many different kinds of media, so many different roles that the media can play. So I think there is really room for everyone. I think everyone should be, as a journalist, free to underline in a sporting event what he or she thinks is important for the audience. And I think, yeah, what is important also now in the post-COVID crisis is also to underline once again how important it is to have a free press. Because, for example, we in sport, during the pandemic and also in this period, have, for example, limited access to the sport facility, limited access to the athlete. And maybe in sport this is not so important, but if this is the trend that will be set also later, then there are some challenges that the journalists have. So I think it's important also to underline how important it is to have the freedom for the press. Yeah.
Bonita palabra. Freedom. Antonio.
Una palabra, a very beautiful word, freedom. So what's the solution from your point of view, Konstantin? What do you think is the solution?
So for me, the solution is also the companies and the medias to create a social responsibility and this type of strategy in the future. So we're not thinking only about advertisement, only about public sport, only about this type of things, massive events. We should really develop a sustainable strategy with communication with the non-government organizations, with another partner, so that we can really develop a good, sociable, responsible media for us.
Thank you. Fernando, la misma cuestión, que tú eres un experto en esta materia.
Bueno, yo voy a
Fernando, could you answer the same question?
Tengo claro que soluciones no hay.
Well, I keep it short.
No hay o no debería haber únicamente una.
There are no quick fixes, and there are many possible solutions, but I will put forward one of them. And I will try to engage José Manuel, who is directing a very important media. I don't believe in making things mandatory for private companies. I believe in commitment. There are no healthy or sustainable companies. Yes. Well, we could create a label, inclusive media. And to get this label, a media should engage to allocate, let's say, 10% of its airtime or space to sport, which is not elite sport. I was mentioning Servimedia, because Servimedia could be a good example. And it has the support of the ONCE and many other organizations. And Servimedia could set an example, and we could watch and we would wait and see which media engage in this path.
José Manuel, yeah, I accept your idea. It's not so easy to put into practice, Fernando. Servimedia has 60% of journalists with disabilities. Not even public administrations have that. There's a quota for people with disabilities that should work in different enterprises. And you could just ask around in many types of enterprises, and not even the public ones have that quota fulfilled. But we should just talk to these people. These people are scared, but there's no problem when you have someone with a disability. People who are blind can listen and read with their computers. If you create the access, people with wheelchairs can go into the office. If journalism is good, doesn't matter what the topic is, people will watch it. We should be doing good work. We should be trying to be professional. I think that's the quickest fix I can find.
Well, thank you. I'm the fourth referee, and I will put an end to this first roundtable. We have run out of time. I would like to thank you all for being here. Thank you, Antonio. José Manuel, it's been a pleasure. Konstantin, thank you so much. Same for you, Fernando. And I would like to thank the organizers of this event, the opportunity to be here today. We hope to have made a contribution to this issue. And of course, we thank the University of Comillas for hosting this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you, Juanma. Thank you. You're one of the best. And I would just want to give a quick reflection. Sport as a definition, as a concept. Maybe we should change our mindset about sports. It's not just women's sports, sport for people with disabilities. Everything is sport. We should be talking about sport as a whole. Grassroots sports are also included. Many elite athletes have started as grassroots sports. Maybe we should be changing the narrative. Maybe we should be treating it as a whole instead of as different parts. We should change the concept of sports and apply it in our everyday lives. We should be doing that from the media, but also in schools, so that every individual has that mindset. It's not a competition. People should change their mindsets. Well, now this roundtable is officially over. José Manuel is now going to talk about us about an initiative from Servimedia.
Muchísimas gracias, Fernando, y al compañero Juanma.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you, Juanma.
Comentaba a Fernando una iniciativa que iniciamos nosotros el año pasado, el año 20 y este año 21.
There's an initiative of Servimedia. It was carried out in 2020 and 2021, and it was related to the Tokyo Olympic Games. This pandemic has been around for 2 years. So we have kind of a hole in time. We had the idea in 2019, and we had to host a series of meetings. We called them Paralympic meetings, and we wanted to have an Olympic and a Paralympic athlete from the same discipline and to engage them in a conversation. I would like you to have listened to one of these conversations. Let me give you an example. Rudy Fernández. You all know him, the basketball player. He's a wonderful person, and he's a wonderful athlete. He has won many championships in the US with the national team, in Real Madrid, and he engaged in a conversation with Daniel Steen. who is a player of wheelchair basketball. And when you were listening to both of them, Daniel's tale was really, really moving. He has been near death 3 times. And the story of his life would make a great book. We organized other conversations. In another conversation, we had Orlando Ortega. Maybe you will remember this competition when we had an incident. Well, Orlando Ortega had a conversation with a Paralympic athlete. One of the goals of these meetings was to bring to the public attention Paralympic athletes who were not so well known. But some of these athletes have become more famous later. And we had in this meeting Adi Iglesias. She's an African athlete. She's Albanian. She came to Spain years ago, and she was in a center for migrants in La Rioja. She found a foster family in Galicia, and this family in Galicia was related to the ONCE. She went to sport facilities managed by the ONCE, and she began to compete, and she won against non-Paralympic athletes. There was a third meeting. We had Teresa Perales, we mentioned her before, and Lidón Muñoz. Lidón Muñoz is another Paralympic swimmer. She went to Tokyo. She was not lucky there. We also had Susana Rodriguez, who made the cover of Time, and she's a physician. And Susana Rodriguez met Jesús Ángel García Bragado. García Bragado took place recently in his last Olympic Games. He's a star of Spanish sport, and he has a very long curriculum. We also found 2 Taekwondo fighters, Joel González and Aitami Santana from the Canaries. We also had Vicente del Bosque, football player, national coach, and he met Rodolfo Acosta, who is the star of the football team for blind people. We had Desiree Vila with Ruth Beitia. Desiree Vila has a lost limb, and she has a prosthetic leg. We also had Irene Paredes. She's a myth of women's football. She played in the Paris Saint-Germain. And she met Antonio Martín Gaitán, who is a blind football player. And we also had Eva Moral and Silvia Mas. We also had Ricardo Ten, who was and David Casinos, who is a myth of Paralympic sport. We also had a meeting with women Paralympic athletes. So we wanted to bring sport in general to public attention. And Paralympic sport was a mirror, and the audience was really, really moved. And I expect this example to spread to other fields of inclusive sport. This was the example I wanted to share with you.
Perfect. I also would like to say that maybe we are not making any questions. Yes, there are questions, but there will be they will be
No
at the
obstante,
end.
es posible que más adelante pues tengamos alguna intervención, ¿vale? Entonces, damos por concluida esta parte
So
de medios de comunicación.
now we will
y
finish
vamos
this
a
part of
empezar con la
media,
siguiente mesa,
and now
que está
let's
dedicada a las
talk
organizaciones
about
que se
sporting
dedican a lanzar,
events and
eventos, acciones,
the
proyectos,
initiatives
iniciativas
and
relacionadas
the
con ese
entities
deporte
that carry
inclusivo, con esa
those
vertiente
initiatives
social
out.
del deporte, inclusión social, igualdad de oportunidades.
Initiatives about equal
Vamos a cambiar la
opportunity,
mesa, van a subir los ponentes
about social
y
inclusivity.
procedemos a presentarlos.
So let's call our speakers to the table, and we will give a brief introduction.
Bueno, de nuevo, buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone, again.
Empezamos esa segunda mesa.
So let's start our
Lo que pasa es
second
que yo tengo
roundtable.
un problema, porque
But I
después
have a
de una mesa
problem.
de comunicadores
After
que se dedican a ello,
a
es
table
complicado
of
moderar y
communicators,
incluso
it's
estar
hard
a nivel de comunicación,
to
pero vamos,
be
que
a
no me preocupa
moderator
tampoco
and to
demasiado
talk
porque
as well as they
las
do.
personas que están aquí
But
presentes,
there will
pues,
be
que
no
saben
problem
mucho
at
de
all,
lo suyo
because
y
everyone who's
desde luego va a
here
ser igual y
knows
espero
a
desde
lot
luego
about their own
igual
field.
interesante que el debate
And I
anterior.
hope that it will
Si os
be
parece,
a
vamos a cambiar el
very
formato,
interesting debate, the same as the
no,
last
o sea,
one.
porque no puedo estar a la altura de Juanma Merino, obviamente.
I'm not
entonces
going to
voy
be
a pasar
Juanma
a
Merino,
vosotros la
so
pelota.
I'm
No voy a
going to
moderar
pass
como
you
tal.
the ball,
Si os propongo un formato de
but let me
presentación que sería
give you
pues en dos
a
tiempos.
recommendation.
Primer tiempo, presentaros vosotros.
First,
Que
I would
digáis un
like
poco
for
lo
you
que
to introduce yourself
vuestras organizaciones
and to
o
talk about your
entidades, a qué se
organization,
dedica
your
relacionado
entities,
con el
what
mundo del
they
deporte
do,
inclusivo.
what does it
Luego
have to do with
hacemos un momento, 20
inclusive
minutos,
sport.
y luego a continuación
That will last for
que
about
nos
20 minutes.
presentéis, y os daré un
And
ejemplo
then
porque voy a empezar
I
yo
would like
egoístamente esa presentación,
to
que nos
have
presentéis vuestras necesidades,
your projects
o
introduced
qué es lo que
by
pensáis,
yourself,
en qué aspectos podrían mejorar
and
la
how
cobertura de vuestros
they
eventos,
could
actividades,
improve,
iniciativas
how could
relacionadas con el
there
mundo
be
del
more
deporte
coverage
inclusivo,
for your
de
initiatives,
cara a los medios de comunicación, ¿no? ¿Qué es lo que se podría hacer?
how
¿Qué es
could
lo
you
que
have a
pedís
better
que se pueda
relationship
hacer para
with
que
the
también el
media,
mensaje
what
vaya
do
directamente
you
a
ask
los
for?
medios de comunicación? Entonces, egoístamente decía,
So, a
me
little
voy a
bit
presentar
selfishly,
también y
I'm going
también
to
daros
introduce
la
myself
pauta.
so
Yo
that
represento
you
una
can see
asociación
how I do.
nacional de un
I'm the
deporte que se llama el
representative
pickleball, que se ha mencionado
for
varias veces en el día
the
de hoy.
Spanish Association for
El pickleball
Pickleball.
es un deporte nuevo,
It's a new
tiene
sport
50
that we
años,
already talked about today.
deporte de
It
raqueta.
has about 50
Es un
years of
deporte
history.
que nació en Estados Unidos.
It
Actualmente hay unos
started
4 o
in the
5
United
millones de
States.
jugadores en el mundo.
There's about
Hay
4 or 5
60,
million people who
65
play it.
federaciones
There's about
nacionales,
60 to
que
65
ya están
national
trabajando a todos los
federations
niveles,
that
educación,
work at
formación,
every level.
competición. Es un deporte, tenemos una suerte, una ventaja de cara a muchos deportes de raqueta que
And
hemos empezado la casa
we have a
por
very
la base.
big advantage.
Es decir, no hemos
We
empezado el
started
deporte por la
building
competición,
with the foundation.
no
We
hemos
didn't start
empezado el
with
deporte
competition.
por el aspecto, digamos, visual de la práctica, sino por un
What
deporte que
we
es
started
100%
with
inclusivo
is with
en su
inclusivity.
definición.
By
El
definition,
sábado
it's
pasado,
an
se
inclusive
ha comentado
sport.
también, hemos
Last
presentado un
Saturday,
evento en el marco de
we
otro
had
proyecto
an
europeo
event.
que se llama Pickleball, también de
It
Erasmus
was
Plus,
also an European
que,
event called Pickleball.
vinieron todo tipo de
And many people came,
grupos destinatarios,
people from all
representando
types
el
of
mundo de la
backgrounds.
inclusión.
It
Y,
was a very
pues,
inclusive
tuvimos,
event.
Estaba la Fundación a la Par presente,
Foundation
que
a la
representa
Par
el
was
mundo de
there.
la discapacidad,
They
tuvimos a
represent people with
colegios,
disabilities. We
tuvimos a
had
centros de
people from
mayores,
schools,
tuvimos
from elderly
incluso
centers.
a internas de las cárceles de
We
la Comunidad de Madrid,
even had
o sea, tema de
inmates
inserción, que es muy importante.
from Madrid's jail.
Tuvimos a deportistas en silla de ruedas, los
We
campeones
had
de España de
wheelchair
pádel, tenis y
athletes,
silla de ruedas.
the
Tenemos un
Spanish
montón
champion
de colectivos
for
que
different
representan lo que es el
sports.
deporte inclusivo en sí.
And
Es
it
un
was a
deporte
very good
europeo y
representation
aprovecho
for
que,
inclusive sports.
ya termino, o sea que más o menos para
And
que
let me
veáis un
finish
poco
with it.
en qué consiste nuestro deporte, tenéis más información si estáis
You have
interesados,
more
pero
information about
quiero
our
aprovechar
sport if you want to take a look at it.
la propuesta que hizo España se mueve a Servimedia
What
sobre el
España se
proyecto
mueve
de
asked
dedicar un sello europeo,
Servimedia
un sello
was the
a las
following.
entidades de medios de comunicación que se dedican al mundo del deporte inclusivo.
It asked
que
Servimedia
el marco europeo es el ideal para
and
hacer ese tipo
other
de
media
propuestas.
that
Es decir, que la
talk
Comisión Europea
about
está
inclusive
buscando
sport.
ese tipo de propuestas e iniciativas, y yo creo que entre todos
Because
podríamos
the
montar un
European
proyecto
Union
muy
is
bonito
looking for those type of media.
directamente a la Comisión Europea.
And
Lo dejo
maybe
ahí también
we
para
together could bring
indagar un
forth
poco más y dejar
in
también
an
nuestra
initiative
huella
for
para
the
que
European
más
Union.
adelante se haga ese tipo de
Let
iniciativas.
me just throw
Bien,
the gauntlet.
entonces, ¿Veis un poco la dinámica? Yo creo que si estáis de acuerdo,
So that's
vamos a empezar.
the dynamic I would want to follow.
Favorecer a nadie, entonces empezar por
I don't want to be biased, so maybe we go from left to right first and then from right to left. So, Antonio, we already know that you're a great communicator. So now, as an organizer and someone who makes events, could you tell us about inclusive events? And then about what do you need from media? Thank you.
Well, I would refer that now to my previous life, so not as a journalist, but when I was working in NGOs, of course, the fact of being involved in inclusive sport for many years, it had an impact when I started my career as a journalist, so I had more awareness for given expression of sport. I have to be honest, I will be frank, when I was organizing any kind of event, I never had any specific issue with finding space on the media. Of course, I was not getting the first page of the main newspaper or the opening of the news in the main TV channel, but that was not really my purpose. So I really would like to deliver a message of optimism, meaning that in this complex media environment, there is room for everyone. So it's about how the event is framed and the media or the journalist or the person you are talking to, because at the end of the day we are all human beings and sport is a human factor, so if you start from that principle, I think it's not complicated in a way to get media visibility. If I go now on the head of, let's say, of the journalist, I think it's important to have a better impact of sport on the overall society. So I think it's a very big need of have a broad vision and to underline the fact that everyone at the end of the day is a person. So to starting from the human dimension, I think this is very important. Just a quick final remark. I work for Radio Capodistria. We are a media entity public. So inside our public service, of course, the relation between sport and human rights is important, especially for a media of a minority. So for us, any issue related to any minority, vulnerable, disadvantaged group, of course, is relevant. So of course, for us, it's different, the perspective comparing to, say, commercial media. But let me also tell you that the concept of minority and majority, it's very thin, because if you change context, you can be majority or minority. There are so many roles that we cover. So yeah, I think, yeah, if I can conclude, is that I think in this complex communication environment, there is really room for everyone, and good journalists are always hunting for good stories.
Okay. Muchas gracias, Antonio. Dejarme de todos modos presentar muy brevemente a los que
Thank you, Antonio. Let me just briefly introduce people here in this round table. Now we have Marcos Herrero. He's the sports area manager for the Alapar Foundation. And you have the floor, Marcos. Good morning, and thank you to the organizers for allowing me to be here today. It's really a marvelous event, what we are having today. People with or without disabilities or any type of pre-existing condition should be allowed to do sports. I work in the Alapar Foundation. I'm the sports area manager, and we try to strive for the rights of people with disabilities. We fight for inclusivity. We walk with these people throughout their whole lives, from schools to jobs, and sometimes we don't even have to walk with them because they are very independent. If we find a barrier, we try to build a bridge over it so that these people have their independent own lives and they can live happily like any other person in our society. And for that, sport is a very important area. 2017, we received an award for our work that we were one of the entities that carried this work out first. Many different famous athletes also worked with us, such as John Ram or other athletes. In the same way as women had to go a long way towards equality and until they became CEOs or directives, maybe one day we won't have to be having these conversations, and people with disabilities will be included the same way in every field. Sport is a tool, a wonderful tool. It's also attractive. And it can play as a cornerstone to show the abilities that these people have. Thank you, Marcos.
I have had the opportunity of visiting the facilities of the Alapar Foundation, and you are doing an impressive work. Now I will give the floor to Evelia Franco, who is the coordinator for the degree of Physical Activity and Sports Sciences in Comillas University. You are playing at your home field, and I'm sure you will have interesting things to tell us. Well, thank you for your invitation. Well, this is not my home field. In fact, this university has several campuses. So here I'm a visitor, in a way. At any rate, I'm so glad to be here. And I'm worried, as you were, because the previous roundtable had a lot of communication experts. But well, I'll do my best. I'm the coordinator for the degree of Physical Activity and Sports Sciences here. And it's offered in combination with another degree to become a schoolmaster for children. So I feel that I'm a part of the educational path of children who will later be working at schools or in sports organizations, trying to promote social inclusion. Antonio said something that I found really interesting, and he said that change must begin in oneself. We don't have to wait for other people to change. And it's interesting to see that the representatives of the media were saying this. It's important to promote social inclusion even if it's not bringing any money. I remember that Fernando Alonso was my idol when I was a child. And of course, I hadn't been told about Fernando Alonso in my physical education class. I had seen him in the media. So this education should not rely on media exclusively. Physical education in schools, it's important too. Let's go back to inclusion in the educational system. I used to be a teacher of physical education. There are some schools in Madrid which teach children with different abilities. And these schools have more resources. And some of these resources were people dedicated to attend, to care for children with disability. So in this case, children with disabilities were not taking part in the physical education class with the rest of the children because they went with a physical therapist to do something different. And in fact, I remember the first time that I had a student with palsy, and I had no resources to deal with this child. So maybe we should teach future teachers to deal with these cases. So I'm not here as a coordinator of the degree. I'm here as a researcher. I have a colleague, Carmen Ocete, who is working with me in a research project. This project has been financed by the Ministry of Education and Innovation. And this project deals with sport and inclusion of people with learning disabilities. This project includes different actions. And there is an individual responsibility. Researchers are valued because of what we publish. But sometimes the papers we publish don't reach a wider audience. So we make an effort, we focus on meeting the requirements, because if we don't meet these requirements, we get no funds. There should be other goals. For example, we should assess the efficacy of our projects. For example, projects to work in schools, women athletes with or without disabilities, internships, organizing events. So I'm finding many new ideas. So I'm getting a new vision. Maybe I don't know yet how to put them into practice, but there are more ideas. So people with disabilities should find information. We are going to create a database so people with disabilities could find easily where they could practice sport. So I'm really very glad to be here. And research is focusing on designing training programs for future teachers. And we will also find ways to collaborate with the media.
Thank you very much. For example, we in Pickleball Spain, we have a problem. Every time we have a new event, for example, we have a campaign that we carried out with schools, but we had no way of reaching out to schools. We also had an event for sports with different generations. We have many activities, we put many hours. We need help from the media, but we also need help knowing how to reach those media, how to show them our activities, and it happens every day. Last week we had a very inclusive activity, and yeah, we had the support from España se Mueve, which is a very big entity, but our work, what we should be doing, we don't know what we should be doing. COPLEF, Consejo COLEF, those are Spanish organizations about ways of teaching teachers to teach. I don't know if there's not enough resources. We will talk about resources afterwards. But there's also a lack of resourcefulness to get those resources. We have the contents, we have the abilities, but we don't know how to put them into practice. You all know Konstantin already. We are very glad to have him here today. He is part of the public administration in Bulgaria, and they collaborate in many events, many of them inclusive. Is it so, Konstantin?
Yes, it's so. I'm glad to be here with such an expert surrounded like you and in the sector. Thank you very much for this opportunity. In our organization, we are working like in the field of sport in the last 11 years, and we think that sport is really excellent tool for all our goals, like integration, for also for volunteering, for developing the new skills of like the skills of the future, for everything. So really important. The important thing in the project management is to be sustainable in the future, and also for this is very important to work good with the media and also with your community on which you are working. And this is the way which we are doing. For example, for us it's very important to develop a good communications with the media, with the other NGO partners, with the schools, with the universities in our area, so that we can make the change together. We really want to inspire them, to help them with different projects, with different initiatives, and really together to be the positive change which we want to see. And we are using different digital tools also in this. I wouldn't repeat the things which the colleague said before. We are using different digital tools, for example, for our communication, like the email marketing automation. We are using the Viber groups, like the social media groups, according to different interests. Also for easier communication with our partners. And we are doing different events also for the media and for the NGO sector in our area, for the schools, for the university, so that we can develop really a good communication with them in the future and to succeed in a better way.
Thank you, Konstantin. Thank you very much. Ahora, como se diría a los ingleses, last but not least, tenemos a
Well,
Adrián
last
Aguilar, es
but
coordinador
not
deportivo
least,
de la Fundación ADF.
I'll
Yo
give the
creo que
floor to
no hay que
Adrián
contar
Aguilar,
dónde estáis
who
muy
is the
metidos también en el
sports
mundo de las
coordination
familias.
of the
Con lo cual, yo creo que es
Foundation
muy interesante,
ADF.
porque hasta ahora se ha hablado mucho de discapacidad, se ha hablado
And he
de
works
deporte
in the
de
area
base,
of
se ha
sport
hablado
for
de
families.
igualdad
This
de
is
oportunidades,
important.
pero de la
We
familia, el
have
aspecto
dealt
intergeneracional es muy
with
importante también.
grassroots
Sí,
sport
efectivamente.
and
Nosotros
sport
somos
for people with
club de fútbol,
disabilities, but
pero
what
no
about
somos
families?
ni mejores ni peores, como
Well, we are
nos
a
gusta decir,
football
somos muy
club.
diferentes.
We are no worse and
En el
no
sentido de
better
que
than
nosotros,
anyone,
aparte,
but we are
consideramos que
different.
en el propio deporte el aspecto de la competición ya está intrínseco,
We
con lo cual no lo
think
fomentamos.
that
Y
we
nosotros
don't
buscamos,
need
tenemos
to
unas
promote
líneas de
competition.
trabajo, que son,
Competition
al final,
is there anyway.
el
So
hacer
we
que
are
el
working
deporte sea un
along
gancho para la
different
gente,
lines.
sea cual sea su credo,
We
su
want
su
to
estatus social,
provide the sport
su estatus
opportunities
económico. Nosotros no
for
hacemos
everyone,
diferencias en ese
regardless
sentido.
of
Entonces,
their
dentro de nuestro club,
social or economic
podemos
status.
encontrar, pues, en un mismo grupo de
So
chicos,
we
pues, chicos
can
que vienen de
find
familias
people from very different
completamente
backgrounds in our
desestructuradas y
club.
demás, o
We
chicos
have
pues,
children
acompañados extranjeros no acompañados,
from
tenemos también
families
muchos
with
casos. También tenemos
problems,
casos de chicos
migrant
que
children,
están dentro del espectro autista, pues, concretamente
children
chicos
with
con Asperger, o incluso,
problems are from the
chicos,
autistic
pues,
spectrum,
familias,
like Asperger,
millonarias.
or
Y
children
todo eso
from
lo
wealthier
hacemos
families.
de tal manera que nadie sepa,
But
que no haya
we
diferencias de cara al público.
try
Entonces,
not to make
hay una
distinctions.
integración dentro de los propios chavales y es una
So
forma de
all
educarlos.
children
O sea,
play
es
together.
es un tema de valores.
And I
Intentamos
think
fomentar
this is a way
a través del
to
deporte,
teach them values.
es un
We are using sport
canal
as a tool
extraordinario para transmitir todo este tema
to
de valores,
promote
de educación
these
y demás.
values
Y al final,
and
pues,
to
bueno, sí, es
educate
verdad que nos
children.
encontramos con muchas dificultades.
It's
Porque,
true
como
that
he
there are
dicho antes, somos
difficulties
muy diferentes al resto de clubes deportivos
because
de
we are
nuestro
so
ámbito, hasta los
different
clubes de fútbol.
from other
Todos
football
los clubes
clubs.
deportivos que están adscritos a la Federación Madrileña.
There are
pues,
many
hombre,
sports
están la
clubs
mayoría
in
enfocados
the
por competición,
Madrid
por
Federation,
ganar,
and
están
most of them are focused
o en
on
menor categoría.
competition,
Nosotros, al
on
final,
winning
el
matches.
que estar en una categoría u otra
But
no,
we are
nos
not
influye en nuestro trabajo.
worried about
Y como bien
being in
digo,
one league
nosotros nos
or
enfocamos
in
a
another,
otros
because we are
son,
focusing on
creemos,
other
mucho más
issues.
importantes,
And
que
we
es,
think these other
integrar
issues
a
are much more
todas las
important
personas de
than
nuestra
competition.
sociedad,
We
vengan donde
want
vengan,
to make everyone
este
a
deporte,
part of
como
our
digo, el
society,
fútbol, o incluso en otros, que
regardless
también,
of their background.
este año hemos abierto
And this
secciones,
applies to football, but also
un
to
poco
other
más,
sports.
raras para nosotros. Nos hemos lanzado a la aventura
For
con
example,
dos equipos de
we
pádel,
have
uno
launched
femenino
two
y
paddle
veterano.
teams. for women and for elderly people. And we are collaborating with a team of football for blind people. They are workers for the ONCE, the Association of Blind People in Spain. We are giving them support. We once had a women volleyball team. We think that sport is the best tool for integration. There is not such a difference between someone with an impairment, a visual impairment, a lost limb, and anyone else. There shouldn't be any difference. Or let's take the case of a migrant child who is here without his parents. He's come here to find new opportunities, and they don't always find them. But sport is a way towards integration. We help them study and find a better future for their families. Some of these children come here with younger siblings, and there are some really difficult, terrible cases. We had a case of a migrant boy. He has turned 18, and he can no longer live in the center where he was living because he's no longer underage. And we are giving him support. We are explaining that this boy is playing for us. Otherwise, he would have been sent to another center, which is quite far from here. So we give a lot of support in these cases. And why? Because we have to help each other. We need solidarity. Otherwise, our society would be dead. At least that's what we believe.
For sure, for sure. So before we go on to the second part, I would like to talk about pickleball. We have an advantageous situation. Why? It's an inclusive sport by conception. It's not adapted. We only have to adapt it for wheelchair. It needs no adaptation. So 2 years ago, Carmen López, an athlete who's very famous in the learning disability field, participated in an event in the Netherlands, an international event. And she took part in her category, in her age category, and she won the bronze medal, competing against people without any kind of learning or physical disability. That's the situation. So now we all know who's who. We know the state of the art. But now here comes a question. We have lots of needs. We know that it's the sport that's 100% inclusive, but we don't know how to talk to the media. We lack the resources to get those resources. We have different entities. For example, the A la Par Foundation that has worked for many, many years. It's an historical foundation. It has even received awards. But some of us don't have that easy of a time reaching the media. That's why we would want to get more coverage for the media. So maybe we should start again, this time by Adrian. And please tell us, what's your dream as an organization? What problems do you currently face? What would you want from the media? Maybe a meeting, some type of event? Any type of activity that you currently do.
we face a big challenge. Media think we are an ordinary football club, but we work in a different way, as I explained before. However, the Football Federation or the wider public think we are a club as any other, like Alcobendas, Santa Ana or San Sebastián de los Reyes, local clubs. And there are many sport clubs, not just football. So we don't engage the attention of the media because they think we are a club as any other. However, our press officer works in the TV and has a lot of connections in the media, and he helps us find more coverage, but this is not enough. And there is another problem. We don't cover all the age categories in our sport. As you know, in football and in other disciplines, there are different categories, but our best team plays in the regional league. And fortunately, this regional league gives us some coverage, but the rest of our teams get no media coverage at all. And all this social work gets no media attention. As I explained, we work with children with learning disabilities, migrant children, autistic children, and this does not get the public attention. So we would miss some support from the media. We would like them to say, well, this club is making something different. Let's give them more visibility. What would you like? Well, there are no quick fixes, as Fernando said before. We have these difficulties, and we are thinking about how to get more coverage. As I mentioned before, Sergio Sande, our press officer, is trying to engage more media coverage, and we have had some coverage from La Sexta and other TV stations. And we get this coverage, for example, when our team reached the regional league, and we get the opportunity to talk a little bit about our social work. But it's a complex issue. It's difficult to find visibility.
That's for sure, that's for sure. So, Konstantin, you come from a public entity. Your entity specializes in sport. Do you think that public media should or could help organizations like ours in any way, shape, or form? Do you do it?
For sure, it can help. We want to have more sections in the web pages of the media, also more regular content, also connected with integration through sport and about these good practices which we have it, because this type of content is not very popular in the media, and there is no advertisement on it. There is not such a big interest also on it, and the media should be like really more motivated to put this content, also to educate more, probably a specialist in the content, also to support their program and everything. So we really need more and more actively medias who will help to support our causes.
Okay, thank you, yes. No sé si hay muchas cosas que decías al principio que estabas muy interesada en ver un poco por dónde iban los tiros. No sé si a partir de ahí ya
you said there were many things you were interested in. maybe you want to share some more thoughts?
No me siento muy identificada con este problema,
Well,
principalmente por lo que
I
comentaba, como no es
don't
algo
identify
por lo
with
que
this
a
problem
nosotros nos valoren y las acciones que nos miden, pues
because we are
profesionalmente
not
y egoístamente
valued
no lo necesitamos.
professionally
Ahora, socialmente creo que sí.
according to
Y
the media
hablabas de la
attention we get.
posibilidad le preguntaba a Konstantin sobre si los medios públicos
I was
deberían apostar
asking
por esto. Y
Konstantin
yo me quedaba
about the
pensando que en las
engagement
últimas
of
convocatorias
public
en materia
media.
de investigación está habiendo
And I was thinking about
está
research
habiendo
projects
un trato preferente o mucho interés en favorecer medidas de
in
inclusión.
recent
Entonces yo me pregunto
projects.
por qué eso no se extrapola a lo otro,
Preferential
porque, claro, lo que
treatment
digo,
has been
nosotros nos dan
given to
dinero,
entities
pero no nos dan dinero
which
para
work
intentar esto. Quizá
for
vendría
inclusion.
bien ayudar a los medios a
So maybe
financiar, porque yo
it would
entiendo que hay
be
poco público para
good
esto, y a mí me parece que el problema viene mucho más
to
de fondo.
allocate funds
Y ponía el ejemplo
to the
antes,
media
perdón, de la educación física.
to give coverage
Quizás si los
to
alumnos
these
en las clases
events.
empiezan a ver más prácticas
Let's
inclusivas, eso ya
think
se normaliza.
about
Si
physical
saben dónde pueden
education
ir a hacer
classes.
práctica y se encuentran con más
If
gente, como
children
como
in
en
PE
el
class
plus que
know about
veíamos,
inclusive
también
sport
faltará. Entonces,
and
en unos
they
años,
know
yo soy
about
positiva y
the
optimista,
facilities,
va a haber más gente interesada en eso porque lo va a haber
in
vivido
some
más,
years
pero
there
yo
will be
sí
more
creo
people
que un
interested in
impulso
inclusive
público,
sport.
igual que lo
It's
está
a matter
habiendo
of time.
para otras acciones,
But
como digo,
we
yo
should
estoy
also
poniendo
need some
ayuda para formar a
public,
gente,
some
para valorar que el
state
programa
support
funciona, para comprar
to-
material y llevármelo a
to
centros
carry
educativos.
out
Igual que
this
está aquí,
research,
creo que también podría venir por
to
el otro
fund
lado, porque al
research,
final
to find
es una rueda, ¿no? O
resources
sea, hay cambio
for
social,
schools.
el medio
So
está interesado,
there's a
pero también
circle.
el medio
You
está
need
interesado,
to
da
change
visibilidad, el caso de
society,
Fernando Alonso que
and
comentaba antes,
this
y la
will
sociedad
impact the
responde.
media, but the
Entonces,
media will
para
also
mí,
impact
la
society and
cosa
be an agent of
vendría por
change.
ahí. Y una cosita
So
más
maybe
que
this
tiene que ver
could
también
be the
concretamente
path.
con mi proyecto. Nosotros
And
estamos pensando en
there's something
en
more
generar
about
esta
my
base de
research
datos a la que
project.
todo el mundo con discapacidad
As I
intelectual
explained,
pueda
we
acceder a ver
wanted to create a
dónde puede ir a hacer la
database,
práctica.
and this
También
database
quizá,
could be accessed
concienciar a
by
estos medios
people with
que
learning
esto puede ser
disabilities.
sembrar hoy para recoger mañana.
At the same
Es decir, ahora
time,
mismo
we could
yo
make the media
facilitar
aware
o ayudar de
of
alguna
the
forma a que la
importance
gente
of
tenga
these
contacto
actions,
con estos espacios, estoy creando la
because
necesidad en
this
el
will
futuro
have
de
an
que le
impact
interese lo que yo le
on
vaya a vender,
the media
pero también a
later on.
largo plazo.
Muchas
But
gracias.
of course,
Yo,
this is
para
this will be
un
far in
poco
the
el sentido
future.
que estás comentando, el tema de la inclusión es cada
Thank
vez
you.
más,
Yeah,
más
so
relevante.
inclusivity
Por la
is
formación
more and more
profesional
relevant
te diré que en la
today.
Comisión Europea es una palabra que es totalmente,
The European Union
o sea,
pays
horizontal en
a lot
todos
of
los programas,
attention to inclusivity
subvenciones,
throughout
ayudas,
all its
etcétera. La palabra inclusión no
programs,
solamente en deporte, sino en todos los aspectos.
and it
Es decir,
gives
que ya hay una
funding to those type of
concienciación y hay
programs.
una
So it's
necesidad de
true
que
that
esta
there's more and more
concienciación vaya a otros
awareness,
países en todos los aspectos.
and
Por eso
we
también se
should
creó
bring that
el
to
programa
other
Erasmus Plus
countries.
Deporte para concienciar a las entidades públicas y privadas que
We should
incluye
raise
los medios de
awareness in
comunicación,
public
que
and
ya hay que hacer un
private
esfuerzo en el mundo de la inclusión,
entities,
que es evidente. O sea que, bueno, vamos,
so that
es
they
algo a
really
medio y
make an
largo plazo.
effort.
Me interesa
Something
mucho ahora
long
lo que nos
term.
puede aportar Marcos, porque como
But now
comentaba
I would
antes,
like to
vosotros
hear
tenéis
from
mucha-
Marcos.
mucho background, mucha historia detrás,
You
mucha
really
experiencia en el mundo de,
know
del deporte
about
inclusivo,
this
pero también
topic
entiendo
about
de
inclusive
la
sports.
difusión de lo que hacéis, cómo lo hacéis, y si aún así tenéis
So,
algún tipo de
I would
demanda,
ask
de
you,
sugerencia,
do you
de
still have
propuesta que podría
any
mejorar
proposal or any way that you could improve your situation? Well, yes, of course.
No, a ver, yo creo que es verdad, ¿no? Tengo la suerte de
It is
pertenecer
true.
a una entidad que
I'm part of an
el deporte es un pilar
organization
fundamental,
where
es el
sports
núcleo
is a
del progreso
cornerstone.
y a través del cual se
It's a key
generan todos los
factor.
contextos alrededor. Y eso para el especialista
We
del deporte,
spin
actividad
around
física,
sports,
pues,
and for
ojalá
someone
todo el
who's
mundo lo pudiera
a
tener en su
specialist,
disposición.
an
Me
expert
parece
on
una
sports,
partida
it's
fundamental.
something
Y es
invaluable.
verdad que el apoyo institucional de nuestra presidencia y dirección titular hace que eso sea posible.
We also
A
have
partir de ahí
the
se
backing
empiezan a generar
of
esos contextos
the
de trabajo,
state,
esas
that
necesidades
also helps.
que muchas de ellas las tenemos y somos capaces de llegar por nuestro departamento de comunicación.
We
que
have
es
many
un
needs,
grupo de
but
gente
we also
muy
have a
profesionalizada que
communication
se encarga de estar en
department
contacto
that
constantemente con los medios y de
reaches the
lanzar las
media,
notas de prensa
that
a
gives
cada día
them
de deporte, no
updates
deporte,
every
trabajo,
day
no
about
trabajo,
sports,
de mil
about
cosas que al final,
non-sports, about
los
jobs.
medios lo que necesitan es tener contenido para poder
Media
lanzar.
need
Muchas veces
content.
le pedimos al medio que genere el contenido,
Sometimes
pero el
we
medio, si
ask
no tiene
them
conocimiento de
to
lo que va a
generate
hablar,
content,
es un
but
freno.
if
Si
they
nosotros
don't know
damos
what
ese
you're
trabajo
talking
de
about,
las
they can't
entidades,
do it.
esas
That's why
notas
we
de
try
prensa,
to
ese
help
contenido, se lo
them.
damos ya medio más
we give them the information so that it's easier for them to publish it. But we could always ask for more. Let me give you an example. Learning disabilities and the future of learning disabilities. We are already talking a lot about sports for people with disabilities. 2010, we had the second conference for sports in Valencia, and one of the conclusions were that all federations, all Spanish federations should have should absorb the federations for people with disabilities. So it should all be a very big federation. And last year, the Spanish Sport Congress said that every federation should have an inclusive sport federation. And if they do so, they will grant them backing. So now all federations have created their inclusive section, and then a law was passed. Through that law, we've started conversations. Spanish Federation, autonomous region federations are all working towards inclusivity. What would I ask for so that people with disabilities were front page in media? Learning impairment is the most common one, but it's the one that's the least represented, for example, in the Paralympics. 140 athletes went to the Paralympics, but only 3 had learning disabilities. I would ask the government, as Evelia said, that we need more backing. We are living a moment for change. We're trying to change little by little. We should just open our eyes and try to foster this initiative. We should teach educators. We should conduct researches so that they can also help better and create better ways to help people with disabilities. To put things in a nutshell, we should all work together. That way, everything will be better. Our foundation always has the same motto: diversity enriches. The world would be richer the more people take part in it.
I agree with you. And you have mentioned an important data, the rate of participation of athletes with learning disabilities. I didn't know this, and I think it's quite significant. Fortunately, there are reasons for hope. We have here the director of the Foundation for Youth Sport, who will close the Congress, and I know that he will contribute to this discussion. I'm glad to put an end to this second panel with Antonio. We have had experts in communications and experts in sports. Now, Antonio, the floor is yours.
Well, it's very complicated to close such a long and fruitful discussion, but I will try to be really simple. Media need content. Event organizers have content and need visibility, so the match, it's possible. That's the good side of the story. The difficult side, which is not that difficult, is that in order to get something, you should change a bit your routine. So at the end of the day, I have my radio show. So on the side, I hold a knife. So in a way, it's also how much the counterpart is available when I need. I mean, in a way, because sometimes it's so complicated to run after the organizer of one very meaningful event in a block it's much more complicated to reach an elite athlete. And sometimes this is one of the main barriers. Like what under many points of view, the radio is on one side the most practical medium. Why? Because basically you need only the voice. You don't have to struggle with the image. Like, what do you need? What do I need? One person which has a telephone, which has basically some kind of activity and has a voice. Even the voice we can even bypass in a way. But I cannot make 25 phone calls to someone for a small event in a block when with 3 phone calls I get a champion. I mean, this is sometimes the difficulty. And sometimes it's also about being available when I need. I give you one example. In Trieste, there is a quite successful club that they work with water polo. They don't have huge amount of resources, but I know that if on Friday I have a hole in the show, I make a phone call and he's there, he's available. So of course, all the time he contact me, I'm happy to give him space. And this is how you build a relationship. I have also another interesting example. He's a young student, I guess. He's a PR for many clubs. Every month, he sends me an email and he will tell me, you know, in 3 weeks we have this event for athletic club of Trieste and we have children with disability, you can call this person. And then we have this with the swimming club and you can call this person, and then we have this one with this one, just if this is helpful for you. Of course it is. Of course it is. And this is the way how we approach. He understands that I need time to plan, so he sends me in advance contact, basic information, 2 lines, I don't need much. Then I speak and they tell me. And of course, I'm happy to cover it. So sometimes really it's very practical. It's very practical. And what I think is also, we mentioned the relation with schools, the relation with private company, the corporate social responsibility, even the municipality. I usually search for alliance where they are. In Slovenia, I work in Italian. So this is a minority language, so I should find people that they speak Italian. So I'm trying to search for them. I give you an example. The Italian ambassador, the current one and the previous one, they are both interested in sport. The previous one was an active sportsman. So every time I had the chance, we were speaking about sport, like starting from the elite level and then arriving to the diplomatic value of sport, to arrive to the social impact of sport with people that they knew how to speak and they have relevance. So it's possible to engage also the diplomatic mission in sport program, as we have seen, for example, today. Medical doctor, this is another interesting category, because we know that to be physically, to be active in sport, physical activity, bring benefit to the health. It's not so mechanic and direct, but most of the case, yes. But there are some doctors that they don't suggest or they don't prescribe. Why? Because they were not sportmen. They were not sportwomen. I mean, they were not athletes. So they don't have this awareness. So in a way, I think if I go back to my old hat of event organizer, I was searching for alliance where they were. So I was going in a municipality where I knew that he was that person that was, let's say, sensitive to this topic, so he was giving me, for example, the sport hall. Maybe I was going to another one and I was getting some other benefit, and then if you put all together, I still think that it's impossible to do a lot of things without necessary big resources. At the same time, I understand that it can be complicated when you work with limited resources, where maybe it's not your main job to organize the event. So of course you cannot pick up the phone if you're working. That makes sense. I mean, of course, if you're a professional PR and professional sportsman, it's easier because that's your main job. But I mean, sometimes it depends. It's not always black and white. It's not that all the media are, let's say, bad or all the event organizers are good. It's to find a match. This is what I think it's the
Okay. Pues muchas gracias, Antonio. Me da mucha pena cerrar ese debate.
Thank you, Antonio. I think it's quite a pity to close this roundtable. But still, I would like to add that we will write all those recommendations down, and you will all have access to it. Let me thank you again, and please let me ask you to stay here until the event is over, and hopefully in the future we will be able to talk about it and the situation will be better. Thank you all.
Muy bien, pues muchas gracias, Marc.
Thank you, Marc. Thank you, everyone, for participating today. And now, let's have the closing remarks. First, we will have Félix Jordán for a 1-minute intervention, and then we will have Fernando, who is the president for España Se Mueve. So, please, let's hear from them.
días.
Hi everyone.
No quería
Good
dejar
morning.
pasar la oportunidad de... Yo he pertenecido a una asociación.
I was part of an association. I was part of the
Fútbol, con la dimensión
football
y la
association
visibilidad y el
in Spain.
potencial que tienen
Football
los
is
futbolistas,
very
pero creo que es
common in
tremendamente
Spain.
importante. Os doy las
But I
gracias
think
porque,
your
me
job
voy
is
muy
very important.
satisfecho. Creo que se
I
han
will
dado
leave here
mensajes clave.
being very
Constantin,
satisfied.
Antonio,
I think you
Marcos,
gave
Adrián,
very clear
todos los
messages.
que habéis participado.
Constantin, Antonio,
Es
Adrián,
muy importante lo que
everyone
habéis
who
dicho.
participated
Creo que,
here.
se
Everything you
recogen
said
una serie de
was very
conclusiones
important. And I
que es lo que
think
todos queremos,
there will be
salir
some
de aquí y
remarks
que pueda
that we all
difundirse a
share.
través de la
We all want to
sociedad.
leave the
Yo
room
como padre,
having this message
mi
shared
hijo hace
throughout the
deporte, mi hija
society.
hace deporte.
I'm a
Creo que
father.
el deporte
Both my
es la
children,
mejor
boy and
herramienta para
girl,
transmisión de
they do
valores
sports. And I
llegue
firmly believe
y que
that
llegue a su
sports
amigo, a su
is
amiga.
a
Tenemos
tool
un
to
problema
teach
muy
values.
importante en España
And
con el
everyone
tema
should
de
be able to reach
sedentarismo,
it.
obesidad.
We have a
Habéis dado
very big
muchísimos
problem in
mensajes,
Spain
por lo
with
tanto, no quería
sedentism,
dejar pasar la
obesity.
oportunidad de daros las gracias.
So I couldn't let
Al
this
final,
opportunity
lo habéis
go.
dicho muy bien,
I
la
wanted to
pescadilla
thank
que se
you.
muerde la cola. Los
Yeah, it's
medios
a vicious
tienen una capacidad
circle.
importantísima.
The
Creo que
media
también los deportistas,
have
los
the tools to
deportistas
change.
potencian ese mensaje y
Athletes
tenemos que
also
involucrarlo. Y por ello,
have a message
no
to
quería
share.
dejar pasar la oportunidad de verdad de daros
And
las
that's
gracias
why I
y
wanted to
que
thank
haya
you so much.
muchos foros, muchos proyectos que
And
se
let's hope that in the
consigan más
future will
recursos,
be
porque realmente es muy
there will be
importante lo
many
que estáis haciendo.
forums,
Muchísimas
many
gracias.
events to talk about your job. Thank you very much.
Muy bien, pues muchas gracias, Jesús. Ahora Fernando Soria Dorado.
Thank you, Jesús.
Bueno, yo voy ahora en esta segunda intervención a ser breve, pero me apetece mucho lo que voy a comentar porque quiero hacer un poco de memoria. Hará casi 3 años aproximadamente, un día, Fernando, mi hijo, me dice, oye, que nuestro amigo Marc Declercq, que conocíamos por el tema del pickleball, que es un especialista en proyectos europeos, nos ha dicho que podríamos pedir un Erasmus Plus, que tal y que cual. Bueno, y yo le pregunto, bueno, estamos en los medios de comunicación, sobre todo los que no tenemos detrás una gran corporación, pues estamos con el presupuesto siempre muy reducido y con la capacidad de trabajo al límite, como mi programa de Radio Marca, le pregunté, bueno, y eso está muy bien, pero ¿qué rentabilidad tiene? Y me dijo, rentabilidad económica no sé, el trabajo y poco más, pero claro, si sale bien luego podemos pedir una fase más, otra tercera, en fin, que puede ser interesante. Y yo le dije, bueno, si tú y Marc estáis dispuestos, pues adelante. Ha pasado bastante tiempo por el problema del COVID. Las horas que ha dedicado Fernando y ha dedicado Marc han sido muchísimas, algunas noches sin dormir, y desde luego no les compensa económicamente, muchísimo menos el tiempo que han dedicado, pero yo sí que tengo que decir que cuando he venido, aunque he participado algo previamente en la preparación de este congreso, cuando he venido, hoy me han hecho madrugar, no es muy habitual en mí, ya que provengo de los programas de radio de la época de José María García, de Onda Cero, Onda Madrid, terminábamos tarde y por eso también te levantabas tarde, pero cuando he llegado y he asistido a este congreso, pues la verdad es que me he quedado gratamente sorprendido. En primer lugar, por el volumen de datos, por la investigación que se ha realizado y sobre todo por la practicidad de esos datos. Yo tengo una frase que yo digo, irónicamente, dicen que no tengo abuela, ¿no? A veces, ¿no? Cuando estoy bromeando irónicamente, ¿no? Entonces hay una frase que yo digo que tengo el copyright, que es, le pregunto a un amigo, a una amiga, oye, ¿cuál es para ti la persona más enferma de todas? Bueno, pues quien tiene cáncer, quien tal, que cual. No, la persona más enferma de todas es aquella que no es consciente de que está enferma, porque nunca se va a curar, no va a tomar medidas. ¿Qué quiero decir con esto? Que lo importante de este estudio es que aporta una serie de datos para que los medios de comunicación en general se den cuenta de que no son ecuánimes y que no tratan adecuadamente todo lo que no es deporte de élite de alta competición, deporte salud, deporte ocio, deporte integración, deporte paralímpico.
they can be aware that they are not
este trabajo pues, me ha hecho a mí también recapacitar. Por ello, y para terminar, quiero agradecer a Marc y a Fernando el trabajo que han hecho extraordinario.
Finally, I would like
con
to
nuestros
thank
socios
Fernando and
eslovenos
Marc,
y búlgaros,
as well
representados
as
por
our
Antonio
Bulgarian
y por Konstantin,
and Slovenian
como Juanma Marino,
partners,
y también
Antonio
a todas las
Konstantin.
entidades que han apoyado,
And I would
especialmente
also
a la
like
Universidad
to
Pontificia
thank
de
all other
Comillas,
entities
a las
who
que han
have
intervenido
supported
en las
this
diversas
project,
sesiones
including
de
Comillas
esta mañana,
University
de este congreso, y por supuesto a la
and
Comunidad de Madrid y al
the
Consejo
Community
Superior de
of
Deporte
Madrid
y Fundación
and the
Deporte
High
Joven,
Council
cuyo
for
representante
Sports,
va a
as well
cerrar
as the
ahora este
Foundation
acto. Así que de
Deporte
verdad,
Joven
muchísimas
Youth
gracias a
Sport.
todos, porque de
And
verdad
now I will
que
give
me
the floor
habéis
to the
impresionado y me
representative of
habéis
this
hecho
foundation
reflexionar,
to
y
close the
si
act.
yo he reflexionado, estoy seguro de que vamos a
But
conseguir entre todos que los medios de
before the
comunicación
end, I would
reflexionen
like
también.
to thank you
Gracias.
all because I'm sure that we will raise awareness in the media.
Muy bien, muchas gracias. Pues dicen en
Thank you
psicología y
very
en
much.
coaching que el primer paso para cambiar
Coaches
algo
usually
es tomar
say that the
conciencia de
first
ello.
step to
Lo que
change
estamos
something is
procurando,
to
lo que
be
estamos
aware of it.
intentando, uno de los principales
That's what we're
objetivos
trying to
de este
do. One of
congreso
our main
es
objectives in
trabajar
this
en esa
Congress
toma de conciencia
is
por
to
parte de
raise
los medios,
awareness,
por parte de
to have the
de las
media
entidades
and
y
the
para
event
entre todos
organizers
empezar a
be more
trabajar en
aware
ese cambio.
and
Ahora doy
work all
paso
together in
a
that
Félix
change.
Jordán-Durríez,
So now let's hear
director general de la
from
Fundación
Félix
Deporte Joven
Jordán
y
Durríez,
Consejo de Deportes.
who's the General Director for the Youth Sports Foundation. Go ahead.
Buenos días a la gente
Good
que
morning,
habéis integrado la
everyone.
última mesa, último taller.
Welcome,
Fernando,
everyone.
Padre, hijo,
Fernando,
Marc,
both the
buenos
father
días,
and the
también buenos
son.
días a los compañeros que
Marc,
habéis venido desde Bulgaria,
good
desde
morning
desde
to our
Eslovenia.
Bulgarian and Slovenian
Daros la
partners.
bienvenida a
Thank you
Madrid,
for
daros la
coming.
bienvenida
Welcome
a
to Spain,
España.
to Madrid.
Y bueno, pues es muy satisfactorio que estéis aquí.
I'm very glad to have you here today.
Con España se mueve y que, bueno,
To be
os
working
hayáis
together
decidido hace
with
unos años os
España se
decidierais
mueve.
a
And a
apostar
couple
por
years
estos
ago
programas
that you
tan
decided to
importantes que
bet
tenemos, que
on
son los programas
us
Erasmus Plus para desarrollar,
and
para sacar actividad
to
hacia
work
adelante, y
together
además, si tienen que ver
with
con la actividad
Erasmus
física
Plus
deportiva,
in
con el fomento de la actividad física
the
deportiva,
development
con la
of
promoción
sports
de
and
esa
physical
actividad
activity
física deportiva y
on
saludable,
promoting
pues, aún más.
healthy lifestyles.
Los
Those are very
proyectos
important projects.
europeos, los proyectos Erasmus Plus,
European
son unos
projects,
recursos muy importantes.
Erasmus Plus are very good resources.
Porque desde la Fundación Deporte Joven hemos llevado a cabo un proyecto también
Our
Erasmus Plus con otras 5
foundation
entidades
also carried
del
out
resto de Europa.
an European
En este
project
caso, con la protección del menor en el deporte, son muy importantes
that
para desarrollar
was about
proyectos,
protecting
propuestas.
minors.
A lo mejor desde un medio de comunicación o desde una entidad privada,
Maybe from the
para
point of
buscar
view
un
of a
rendimiento
private
económico en una primera
entity
instancia es complicado,
or the
pero
media,
son
it's
programas
hard
sobre todo
to
para
see
sacar
the
un
revenue.
rendimiento social, un rendimiento de actividad,
Our
que
projects
quede un legado
have more to
en la
do
sociedad,
with
en
the
este caso,
social
en el
dimension,
ecosistema deportivo,
to leave
y tanto
something
vosotros con este
behind
congreso
for the
que
future.
estáis planteando en el
For the
que
future
es un foro de debate,
generations.
un foro de discusión en el que
Right
realmente
now, we have a red table.
se valora la importancia que
We
tienen los
are
medios de comunicación,
raising
la difusión, la
awareness.
promoción,
We
la
are promoting
comunicación
debate,
en los hábitos
communication,
saludables, en la adquisición de hábitos saludables,
trying
que
to
tengamos
promote
más
healthy
más
lifestyles,
practicantes en la importancia
to
que tienen
have
que tener los
more
medios de
people
comunicación
and
en
more press
ese deporte, en esa
coverage
actividad física fuera de los
about
focos,
physical
de los anuncios de las
activity
medallas, pues la verdad es
that
que
don't
es muy importante.
have to do with elite
Es también
sports
gratificante
or medals.
ver que entidades de diferentes países, en este caso
I'm
de
also quite
Bulgaria,
happy
de
to
Eslovenia, de
see
España,
representatives from different countries, from Slovenia, from Bulgaria.
un reto que es dar a
You have different challenges
plantear esa hipótesis
to address.
que durante todo el proyecto se ha llevado a cabo y que
The
con las
hypothesis that
conclusiones
you started
en
with,
este congreso y durante todo el trabajo
that you
realizado
tried
es,
to verify,
saber si realmente los
to
medios de
know
comunicación
whether
apuestan
the
por
media
ese
don't pay
deporte más
enough attention
de actividad física
to
saludable, ese deporte
sports
más para
that
todos, ese deporte que practicamos,
don't have
esa actividad física
that
que
don't have to
practicamos
do
todos.
with elite sports,
Por lo tanto, es un reto
that they don't
común,
pay enough
un
attention
reto
to grassroots
común
sports.
que lo
It's a
afrontáis de
shared
una manera
challenge,
conjunta, y eso es lo
and
realmente
you are
importante
facing it
y lo
together,
realmente bonito, proyecto
and that's
transnacional,
beautiful.
transfronterizo. Yo que vengo de una zona del Pirineo de Huesca,
I come
transfronteriza,
from
pegado
near
con
the
Francia,
border
de una
place
zona rural, de un
that's
pequeñito
near
pueblo del
France.
Pirineo, conozco muy bien qué son los programas Interreg,
So
también programas europeos de
I'm quite
colaboración
familiar
transfronteriza. Lo
with
importante que son
collaboration
para
projects
desarrollar
that go
actividad en el
over
ámbito cultural, en el
borders.
ámbito deportivo,
to have projects for wellness, for communication, for sports, healthy lifestyles. So I'm very glad to see many different types of organizations, NGOs, public and private organizations, and you're all working together to face these problems. That's vital. So let me please thank you and congratulate you. The concept of sports and physical activity, I like to mention both. I wasn't able to be physically present here, but I was following through the screen the whole morning. And I heard many interesting things. We should also talk about what values are taught at each level. Some levels don't teach that many values, that many positive values, but we're talking about sports for all. And now we're talking about promoting healthy lifestyle, and that's the kind of sport that's the most valuable, that teaches the most valuable lessons. I firmly believe, and in fact it was the first thing I ever said to the press, was that sport is a public tool that promotes health. It also promotes economic growth, wellness, it fights the lack of resources in many regions, fights poverty. It doesn't matter what competitions there are. Yeah, athletes are great, and having successful athletes give us certain status symbols. We create idols, role models, but sports goes much more beyond. We have many different problems that we have to face. Public, private entities, NGOs. We have to think outside of the box, not think so much about elite sports, competitions, rules, federations. We have to have a bigger mindset. We have to see it as a tool, as a social tool, wellness. That way we will have a better society in the future. And that's one of the most vital topics that we have addressed today. And media plays a bigger role here. Be it small media, bigger media, they all have something to say. We work hard to have a minute and a half to appear in Spanish national TV at 9 to talk about protecting minors in sports. Many people watch this news, so it's very important. But we shouldn't forget about other types or levels of communication. Communicating through other fields, through other sides of society, in other contexts. We should also know how to connect. I said that before. We have to connect with young people. Sometimes young people don't pay attention to traditional media. Not only social networks. Young people want to live experiences. They want to experience things firsthand. We have to fight screens, fight against easy information. Public, private entities, media, we have to work on that.
Para finalizar ya mi intervención, este congreso, este programa Erasmus Plus,
Congress and this Erasmus Plus program, Europe is Moving, has different factors. There are many entities, but I think it's all a part of the Spanish government. One of their objectives is to close the gap between the public and physical activity and sports.
Todos los niveles competenciales de la administración tienen competencias en materia deportiva. Un municipio
The government has competencies on sports at every level, so they can decide from regions, from local governments, national level.
Y mantenimiento de infraestructuras, las comunidades autónomas
they should work on
competencias
infrastructures.
deportivas en materia de deporte escolar, en materia de
They
tecnificación
also
previa,
get to decide on the school systems. The state is the one that decides on elite sports. So everyone has their own field to work within. But we should all work together on using sports as a tool. As I already mentioned, we should stop thinking always about elite sport. Yeah, it's very valuable. It also teaches people to be more active. It generates revenue. But it's not the only thing that we have. And that's what we should be working on. There are many initiatives, many projects that we are carrying out nowadays. For example, my foundation, we right now have many pilot projects to fight kid poverty through sport. We are trying to promote group sports in rural zones where maybe there are 50, 60 people living, and maybe there's only 4 children at school. We are also working on a national project to fight off obesity. And in that project, sport plays a bigger role. We also have funds that come from Europe. 3,000 million euros are going. 3 million euros are going to be spent in this kind of projects. We are trying to work together with the people, with every kind of entity, so that no matter how small the area you come from, you can have these opportunities. We need a society that's more active, that's healthier. We said it here today, and you've said it a lot of times. Having a healthier society leads to less expenses in health.
Por lo tanto, toda aquella entidad, todo aquel ente, todo aquel programa, proyecto que vaya en esta línea,
initiatives, projects that go along those lines should be welcomed, and we should be all working together towards that. So that's why I would want to thank initiatives such as this one, and I would really try to empower them to keep on going, so that more people will take part in it. That way we will have a more active society. We should all be doing much more sport. Thank you very much.
Pues muchas gracias, Félix.
Thank you, Félix. I have liked your speech, and there are a couple of things I would like to highlight. First, a wider definition of sport. Secondly, another key idea, an idea with a lot of potential, which is youth. Young people at the present and the future. Both media and the sports organizers have been working in an established way, but young people are digital. So if we want to go on working in the area of inclusive sport, we should look ahead. We should think twice and design events and carry out projects in a different way. We need a different approach to target young people. And we have to find different channels to reach young people. I think Florentino Pérez said something along these lines. He said, young people don't watch football. However,
que juntó a dos personas en un combate de boxeo, a dos famosos,
organized an event where millions of people watched this. So we have to adapt our ways, and we have to target young people and other groups, of course, but we need an approach to reach the young people. And there's something more. If you have missed any part of the conference, we will upload the video in our YouTube channel, so you could watch it again. And I think this is all. Thank you all for taking part in this event. And if you are watching us from home, please remind to move and make people move. Thank you.